Hello and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast. My name is Ryan.
And I'm 100 different, more concise hacks.
All right, we're just jumping right into it. So, hey, listen, today we are going to be looking at Apocalypse World from Meg and Vincent Baker. And I'll tell you right off the bat, if you didn't like our review of Blades in the Dark, you won't like this one either. So
You really won't.
You really won't. So we were talking about this a little bit before because we our little ADHD brains struggle to read this one in a similar but different way. At least for me, I don't know if it's from Blades in the Dark. Like that was just such a difficult book to parse. I feel like this was almost more difficult.
I don't know if this was difficult in the same way. I think I didn't like reading this one. I think it was like...
I didn't like reading that one either, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like reading both of them. Blades in the Dark, I really genuinely had a hard time with. It felt like a lot of text packed into small spaces. This one has some breathing room, but it's just very, very conversational.
Yeah, it really sounds like someone with... And here's the thing. I say this from experience because I know this is how I talk. It sounds like someone with ADHD had too many Red Bulls and just ranted the entire story at you in one go.
Yeah.
And that's why it repeats itself so many times and then talks about things but doesn't get to them until like 200 pages later. And like,
I feel like we started with a caveat in our own discussion before this, which is that the original version of this game is from like 2010, right? This is 2E, which is, I mean, I still think, what is it, 2016? Right?
So wait, let me do the. I have a whole spiel.
Oh yeah.
I got a whole
do
spiel.
the opening. Yeah, hold on. Here we
go. We have new openings thanks to Josh Demansky because he 100+ episodes in, he told us, or at least by his own preparation, things that we should have been doing instead. Oh, it's on my Discord. So I do. Yeah, there was a couple things I wanted to say. I Discord messaged myself because I didn't want to put it in Notes app, and I meant to put it into paper, and then I didn't do that either. So first and foremost, let's say that Meg Baker did come down with illness a couple of months ago. Maybe I'm completely wrong because I meant to write it in here, but she did get diagnosed with breast cancer. On 7/17. And there is a meal train, which is like a GoFundMe set up to help support her while she is in appointments and unable to work and things like that. So we will, that is still active. It's still open. You can still donate. I donated a while ago. So we will make sure that link is in the, in all the shit so that you can donate to Meg. From everything that I've heard about Meg Baker, she sounds like the fairy godmother of a lot of the people in the TTRPG, universally loved, universally respected, has seemed that everyone that's ever met her has felt supported by her. So that would be a really nice thing for everyone to do if they could, if it's possible for you to donate to, I keep pointing down as if the link's down there already. It's not, but it will be. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. So definitely try to support Meg as she goes through this situation if you can. And if you can financially, sharing the link, that always helps. So second, all right, the spiel for Apocalypse World. Okay, so it originally came out in 2010.
Okay.
And when I think back to what I was doing in 2010, that's so crazy. That's like 13 years ago.
I was doing drugs, so
yeah, I wasn't even playing tabletop roleplay games in 2010. I wasn't. Yeah. But when it came out, it won the 2010 Indie RPG Award for Game of the Year. It won the 2010 Indie RPG Award for Most Innovative Game. It won the 2011 Golden Geek Award for RPG of the Year, as well as a number of other awards. So when this came out, it really blew a lot of people's minds. It's a lot different now, 13 years later, when there's like 1,000 PbtA games that are done differently. But this is the original. So the 2016, the second edition came out in 2016. That is when Vincent Baker of Lumpley Games added Meg Baker onto the game as well. That's when she joined to help write the game. It funded on Kickstarter for 4,332 backers, pledging $149,681. So about almost $150K in 2016 for a tabletop game, which also sounds crazy.
That does actually sound pretty crazy.
Yeah. And again, this is Lumpley Games is the creator. You can find them on Twitch. That's Vincent Baker. You can find their blog that talks all about putting stuff together, and they're active on Twitter and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we hop into this is what is PbtA? Powered by the Apocalypse isn't the name of a category of games, set of games features, or the thrust of any game's design. It's the name of Meg's and Vincent's policy concerning others' use of the intellectual property and creative work. And if you don't believe me, that is literally from their website. That is a quote from Vincent Baker. There is literally a page on their website called like, what is PbtA or whatever, and that's what it is. So all of the, and if you read through some of the Lumpley blog stuff about writing in PbtA, it talks about a lot of the mechanical aspects that have now been tied to PbtA were never intended to be a system. Like the Apocalypse World was written to be Apocalypse World, not a system, and obviously an ecosystem of systems has come from that. So just to get off the bat, 2d6 mixed success and playbooks and moves and stuff like that doesn't mean it's a PbtA, and if you don't have it, it doesn't mean it's not a PbtA. Per the creator,
per them. I think there's that like intent versus execution thing here.
I say that with a caveat too, because at the end of the book we get to a section called "Powered by the Apocalypse," which is literally other people's like move hacks of it. So it's interesting that they then chose to use it and say it's not that thing that we said at the back of the book. But yeah, so that is Powered by the Apocalypse. So do we want to complain now or just the whole time? What's your thoughts?
I think we did some preliminary complaints. Just if you're listening, this is gonna be one of those episodes where we don't read word for word because this book has a lot of words and a lot of them are not necessary. It's 309 pages, and it's not even that it's jam packed. There's a lot of empty space in this book, but it's there's a lot of things that are said that I think part of it is just like the evolution of how we write games and the understanding that the ecosystem has about how games are run. Things are less explained now because there's more context for this, and we have a better understanding of like, this is the rule, this is how it works, and you don't need to really expand upon it any more than that. And sometimes I think we've been like, oh, it would be great to have play examples here. And maybe that is why there's so much here, is because it's really a progenitor to all these things. But yeah, so we're gonna surmise.
This is gonna be a lot of pedantic bitching, and I don't even think a lot of it's pedantic. I think a lot of it is just well, let's get in. Yes, you're right. We did preliminary complaining, and now let's get into the real complaining. Yeah. There's a really early thing that I think would change a lot about this book. So let's address that. First of all, two things about the cover. One, it's dope as fuck, and two, I love that it's a photograph.
Yeah, totally. Great cover. Just very iconic. You know, like good cover.
For those that haven't seen it, it's an apocalypse-looking person, like with a red gas mask on, like old school gas mask with the tube, kind of looking up at the sky, looking like maybe they either just put it on or they're tearing it off. There's like smoke behind them. Like, it's just a dope fucking cover. And like this one has just
is great.
Oh, off of that smoke from the back, it's so good. I will say I do enjoy the red on the actual book cover better than the white on the PDF cover, but again, it's just a PDF, it's fine. And I know that the first edition, as far as pictures I found of it, is a completely different piece of art, which also looks dope as fuck. Okay, cool. So again, it's one of those books that I'd love to have just to have. And I will say from a strictly like text usability standpoint, it is bookmarked to fuck. It is hyperlinked to hell. Yeah. It has indexes at the back. It has glossary at the back. It's got hyperlinked table of contents in the front. There is very little more that I could want from a PDF. They did a really fucking good job of, at the very least, making the PDF navigable, you know? And I do appreciate that. We start off with a list of other games by Vincent Baker. I have never really read a lot of these other games. I know that a lot of people are into Firebrands, which is like a romance game. And then other games from Meg Baker listed here as well, but there's a bunch. In a Wicked Age, Dogs in a Vineyard, Spin the Beetle, The Vengeful Demon of the Ring. I don't know what that is, but that sounds cool. I do have some of the recent stuff that they put out. We might get a chance to go over sometime, but 1001 Nights, Valiant Girls from Meg, Apocalypse World Master Ceremonies. So this is a page where I went back to double check and didn't see. So this is what's interesting to me. So this is Apocalypse World, the Master of Ceremonies Playbook, 2nd edition, 2016, D. Vincent Baker, and Meguey Baker, Meg Baker. So illustration and book design by D. Vincent Baker, 2010-2016. Cover photo by 𝗪𝗆𝗆. Stock photos, and then a couple other things. Is there any, and this says a Lumpley game. It's got the original Powered by the Apocalypse logo on this one, and it's rated R for language, sex, and violence. Sex is in this game. Interesting.
It was interesting, especially like, I mean, I have a very modern take on these games. Like, it's really only been the past few years that I've really gotten into like the what's up?
No, keep going. Yeah.
I like the non-traditional tabletop gaming. And like, it's really avoided in almost everything. So it was interesting to be like, oh, they talk about that here. I mean, I don't inherently have any issue with it, but like my table is probably not good with that. But
yeah, I wouldn't have sex on my table, but like the way that they do sex in this game is really interesting. We're definitely going to talk about it. Because it's definitely not making love and trying to have romances. It's having sex and fucking. So we'll get to it. Yeah. But is there anything on this page that you find missing? Maybe like a different kind of person that generally would be on this page?
Oh, an editor?
An editor. My God, does this book need a
not
fucking
an editor?
editor?
Wow, that actually really does. I did not know that before. Yeah,
it would change so much if someone sat down and was just like, again, going to the analogy of someone just like ranting the game at you. If someone was like, okay, bro, you said that like 3 times already, let's just cut that part out, like, would make such a huge difference. An editor could cut this down to 150 pages.
I mean, really, they very much could. I think there's a lot of good in here. I think there now is like hacks of this. I think have less of the same stuff that I think do a little bit more with it. But I think other than that, yeah, I mean, cutting down the needless word count and like the triple mention and stuff, we'll get into it. But yeah, an editor would have been a good idea.
Oh my goodness. And here's the thing is this game is I like games that are spoken with like a voice, when a game has like a personality of like, it feels like the person explaining the game is like talking to you, but I like it in the way like Marching Order does, right? This doesn't sound like the creator made like this character that's talking to you. I don't know how to explain the game. It's like the creator is just having an extraordinarily casual conversation about,
we're in a kitchen at a house party with a beer, and I'm explaining to you, keep what you kill. I'm like, listen, so
it's that meme of like the dude like holding that girl's neck and just like talking into her ear.
She's like just staring for it. Okay.
Dude, there's literally a part like there's numerous parts and it's like, well, this is what I do for my house rule. And I'm like, bro, you wrote the game. All the house rules are the rules. Why would you even say that?
House rule is the rule. So.
Come on. So, okay, let's actually get into it. So you'll also need some stuff. I love that so much of Apocalypse World is free and out there for you. You can just go to the website and download a ton of it.
Totally.
That's the other thing about Megan Vincent Baker is they never asked for money really for anybody to use their system. And again, in 2010, this was very different, and them basically opening up the entire system to be able to be hacked and made money off. And it's crazy the number of names you see in this book that made very popular PbtAs afterwards.
Yeah.
John Harper, Adam Coble, like a lot of the original like first gen PbtAs are in this book. So it's interesting, but they have been extremely generous with the popularity of their system.
I think the culture owes them a couple bucks. Like, I know they did something recently where like, hey, you could back this and like send us some money if you've used her. I'm like, I think they're probably owed more than they actually got, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of the recent tiers for the Kickstarters lately, there's literally a tier that says, hey, if you're a game designer who made a bunch of money off of PbtA and you want back at this tier to literally just give us money. We've never asked for any, but if you feel like you might owe it to us because you made money off of us,
they're probably owed that money.
Yeah. So getting into this, I'm hoping, and I know this as we get into books, we say this and then we don't do it. I want to skim like 90% of this. So we're going to do a lot of that.
I'm going to like sit here. I'm going to crack out the whip. And every time we get too deep, I'm going to start
Yeah.
raising it above my head and screaming.
Well, the thing is, I do want to skim through most of it because we don't need to talk about most of it, so that we can talk about the parts we really want to talk about.
Totally, absolutely.
The other thing that I think an editor would have helped massively with as we go through these 3 pages of table of contents is the order of the sections makes my brain explode. It seems like they wrote all of the chapter headings down on cards, threw them on a table, did a casino shuffle, and then was just like, that's probably good, because I don't understand why things are in the order that they're in, right? Why do you have the basics and then the playbooks, right? And then a whole GM section of stuff, and then go back to the basic moves. So the first time you really get a solid read through of like how to play the game by its basic moves is 136 pages in. Why is harm and healing, which is a basic component of the game, 200 pages in? Like, I don't understand that at all. Why is the MC section like the third thing? And why are all of the players' playbooks literally like the second chapter heading?
I actually went to go look at my favorite PbtA, which is a not very good. I think it's a good game. It's not a very balanced game, to see where the playbooks were in this one. And you know what? They're at the fucking end.
Where they should be. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing too. Reading this, I reached out to a person who I love and respect. They're fantastic. Aaron King. If you want to know how to play a PbtA, you need to read Patchwork World 6e. They do their take on PbtA, but as far as explaining how things like moves work and clocks work and things like that, it is in my opinion, like the primer for how to understand the intent of a thing that's a little bit headier sometimes, because it's not completely straightforward, even though it kind of is, like, because of the concept of moves. But Patchwork World 6e is made me reading this easier to parse, because I knew the parts that were important and how they're actually like meant to run. I feel like this is one of like my least favorite and most poorly explained PbtAs is the original PbtA. So
I think Patchwork World is great, and every time I read it, I like it more. Not that I don't like it at first, but after like going through it a couple times, like, man, this is really, really good. And
also just the fact that the moves really are questions, and that's something that I really want to dig into. So anyway, check out Patchwork World from Aaron King. Aaron King has also done like actual just like straight up books about PbtA moves and things like that. They are like the PbtA master. So anything from Aaron King, definitely want to go check out all of their things as far as PbtA and all of its how-tos. So I'm not even going to go through the list of stuff in the table of contents, because it's like 20 things. We're going to start with the basics. I will say this is what I always mean when we talk about games. I want a rundown of the rules before we get to character creation, so I can understand why I'm creating my character in that way. So I really like that they start with that. That's my favorite part, and then we go from there. Yeah. 300 pages. So it's really not 300 pages, because by the time you get, it's like 288 before it starts getting into other things, and then the playbooks themselves take up like 50 pages. So at the end of the day, when you really look at like the stuff that you like quote unquote need to read, you're looking at more like
50 pages, 10,
well, outside of the things you can chop off, I'm talking, so you can drop off like 70 pages for just playbooks and like extra stuff at the end, like indexes, things like that. So down to like 230. It's still a lot. So we get to our first piece of art here. It's fine. Yeah. It kind of looks as if you dropped a photograph into Illustrator, did an image trace on it, and it just creates like a very chopped up, shapy vector image. It reminds me of the way that John Harper did the art in Blades in the Dark, but this is a much more, I want to say, amateurish. Like this is much simpler versus what John Harper did in theirs. But it's fine. There's basically no art in the entire book. They're basically just chapter headers, and that's about it. And the art's fine. It's serviceable. It's got some vibes to it. You kind of understand what's going on. Like this one, for example, definitely blood on their hands. I do dig that, or at least that's how I saw it.
Sure. So, that's not exactly how I saw it, but you saying that, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I do like whatever the font is that they chose the entire way through, this like really beat to shit text face or whatever.
Definitely a high point.
Oh, but it vibey, really dig it. Here's the thing, man, this could have been a zine. But anyway, so I'm going to do a quick run through of the basics, as we're going to do a quick run through of everything else. And we're actually going to talk about the mechanical bits when we get to them, because they're very few and far between. So just kicking off, setting up the game here a little bit. So Apocalypse World. Nobody remembers how or why. Maybe nobody ever knew. The oldest living survivors have childhood memories of it. Cities burning, society in chaos, then collapse. Families set to panicked flight. The weird nights when the smoldering sky made midnight into a blood-colored half-day. Now the world is not what it once was. Look around you. Evidently, certainly not what it was. But also close your eyes, open your brain. Something is wrong. At the limits of perception, something howling, ever-present, full of hate and terror. From this, the world's psychic maelstrom, we none of us have shelter. I will say, I wish the psychic maelstrom felt more present in the rules.
Yeah,
it kind of feels like they brought it up, and then at the very end they go, okay, but this is how it works, like 250 pages in. So I think the length of the book makes the book worse because it takes so long to get to the important parts. So setting up to play, you find players. This is a part that I didn't really. So the one line in here says the game really kicks in around the 6th session mark, and it can go much longer. If it takes 6 sessions to really get to the meat of your game, you're not going to play that game with a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like that kind of reminds me of the whole like Blades in the Dark thing, where it's like you won't understand it the first time you read this. And I'm like, well, then you wrote it bad. Like, you know,
what a weird thing to put in, even if it was true. First off, if I feel like that about my own game, I might revisit some things about it. Second off, if that was true and I liked my game, I would not put that in my game.
I wouldn't tell people that.
I would like reading that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just not gonna do this.
That's exactly that is the first time I would bounce off this game. I'll tell you right now, if I didn't have to read this for the review, I would have bounced off this like 8 times. Probably never finished it. Yeah.
Oh, I did not finish this.
Yeah. So, and this kind of starts the whole written in an extremely casual, chatty part right here. Basically, it says gather the supplies that you need, whatever. Get some playbooks together. Playbooks are the characters, like 4-page character sheets. You need those. You can download them at Apocalypse World. Again, that's linked. It's great. Ooh, this one's not linked. But it's linked earlier. Continuing with the basics, the conversation. Role-playing is a conversation. We all know that now. In 2010, it's probably good to have this in here. But again, as part of the basics, I don't mind this being in here. The rules mediate the conversation. They kick in when someone says some particular things, and they impose constraints on what everyone should say after. Makes sense, right? Again, we start seeing bits and pieces of that like conversational tone that just gets worse as you go. Moves and dice. The particular thing that makes these rules kick in are called moves. So there is more than a page in the basic section. It ends up being a page and a half on kind of like what moves are without really telling you how to do moves until the very end. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. When we go to this page here on page 10, right? It is an entire page talking about moves, giving examples of moves, having a very casual conversation about moves. And in the last paragraph, it says, okay, so each move says which stat the player should add to their roll. To roll a plus stat, the player rolls 2 dice, adds them, and adds the stat. If the sum total is 6 or less, that's a miss. If it's a 7 or more, it's a hit. 7 and 9 is a weak hit. 10 plus is a strong hit. That's 2 sentences right there explaining what this page and a half is talking about. Yeah. And the difference that I found between this book and Blades in the Dark is, even though I felt like Blades in the Dark had way too much writing to explain a very basic concept, it's like 10 pages per rule. What they did, though, is they actually took the rule out, put it at the top in bold, and said, here is the rule. Now let me talk about it way too much, but the rule was at the top. Okay. This says, let me talk about this thing way too much. And at some point, with no actual designation of what I'm talking about, in this 2 pages, a rule will be in there somewhere. I'll help you find it. That's how I felt about the whole game. That I felt like I had to dig for Easter eggs to be like, oh, that's a core mechanic of the game.
Yeah, it's like every subheading, I was skimming under it to find what part of the subheading was actually like the mechanical part of that. And actually, there's another, this same section that you're talking about, the third from the last paragraph, also has another actual rule in it. But it's like the third from the last paragraph explains, take +1 forward or take -1 on them going.
Yeah.
It's like, float all that shit all the way to the top.
All the way to the top. And at no point when I got to the end and I saw all the indexes and glossaries and everything, I'm like, dope. There's going to be like, maybe there'll be like a 2-page breakdown of like the core stuff. Nope. It's like they actively decided to be like, oh, well, we didn't write a system, so there is no core part to the game. It's really about the narrative. And it's like, yes, but here's the thing. Like if you give a 4-year-old, a couple of 4-year-olds, right, a bag of marbles and say, go play with them. Sometimes you'll have more of them. Sometimes you'll have less of them. And eventually you'll have math. Like that's not helpful at all. Right. But if you go, here's one marble, here's one marble. If
you lock a bunch of monkeys in a room with a typewriter, eventually you'll get Shakespeare.
Right. Like the war against like explaining the mechanics in this book broke my little brain. Like
it is interesting because like this is a system. Like you can say whatever you want and you can feel however you want, but this, when you sit down and you write a game that has dice mechanics tied to a narrative flow, like you made a system. Like it is in fact a system.
And even if you don't want the players to what's really interesting is how much you have to engage with the system and how little it wants you to engage with the system.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really interesting. We'll get to some other why I don't like moves later. But again, so moves and dice, that's basically what this section says. And it's a 1.5 pages to explain that. And you have to dig into that section about it. And the other thing that it does a lot throughout the entire thing is it never really separates. It never says, here's a rule, here's an example of play. It's just as they're talking, suddenly they'll just break into what other players are doing and this and that. So that's another issue, is that there's so many examples of play, but it's not written as examples of play. It's written as just like a 1 paragraph. Oh, sometimes your player will do something like this. And suddenly there's quotations and stuff.
I'm going to be really honest. I didn't read any of the examples of play in this.
That's what I'm saying, is they're not really examples of play as much as it's just like a continuation of the rant and be like, so sometimes they'll do this, but it's not. I would have much rather like gotten a rule and then had a section called example of play for how moves work, as opposed to like getting bits and chunks of it like all over the place. And one of the core things about it, and then we'll move on because then we're in the basics, but this section explaining like moves is bigger than the section explaining moves in the move section. And they do that frequently throughout, where it's like, here's some parts, but you'll find it actually really later, but this part actually explains it better than that part later. And it's so redundant. There's so many redundancies. But here's another issue I have. So the rules for moves is to do it. That's bolded, right? In order for it to be a move and for the player to roll dice, the character has to do something that counts as that move. And whenever the character does something that counts as a move, it's the move and the players roll dice. So it says, usually it's unambiguous, quote unquote, like right in, damn it, I guess I crawl out there. I try to keep my head down. So I'm doing it under fire, quote unquote. Like, yep. But there are 2 ways they sometimes don't line up, and it's your job as MC to deal with them, right? So this is the thing too. I feel like the writer was extremely unsure that people would understand it, so they over-explained it way too much. And again, not in a Blades in the Dark way where it's like, here's like from a DM perspective, it's more of just like, here's my thought process, like dumped out over and over and over again. So here's the issue really quick that I have with moves and why this book is like the reason I have issues with moves in the way that it's written, right? So my issue with moves is a common issue with moves in that I don't like the basic move list, because I feel like everybody will just be staring at the list going, okay, what can I do? Right. Like, well, I have to do one of these. But when you read blogs and stuff, a lot of people are like, there's this thing that for PbtA heads that go, well, if they don't trigger a move, they can just do whatever they want to do. right? So if you're just walking through a door, you don't have to roll for it. If you're doing this, you don't have to roll for it. It's only when you trigger a move. So you have to know the moves well enough to know when you trigger them and all this other stuff. But like that aspect of like, don't roll when you don't have to roll is so poorly explained in this. But this idea of like, to do it, and if you do it, then do the moves or whatever is dumped and dumped and dumped. So it comes down to the way that you write a game will intrinsically affect the way people play the game, right? It's the reason 5e writes the way it does to force people to play it in the way that they want them to play it. So in here, the moves are explained in this way where it's like, well, they only like are triggered when you trigger them. Okay, so you don't have to roll all the time, but then you get to parts of the game that are literally like, you know what, you know how to end a session? You do a move. You know what you do once the game is over and you have to like highlight other people's stats? It's a move. Like you literally have like meta outside of game moves. So it feels like everything is a move. Like I expected there to be like I have to get up to piss move. Like it feels like everything you do, you can't do anything until you make a quote unquote move. But intrinsically, very poorly explained in here is that you don't have that. Not everything is a move. So it's like, but if you write the game where everything feels like a move, then people will always be looking for a move to do as opposed to doing what they want and then seeing if they have to roll because it triggered a move. People will be looking at the basic move list and going, well, I have to do one of these. So instead of like allowing the narrative to like do whatever you want, and if it triggers a move, you roll for the move, it actually becomes you have to do one of these moves, and therefore your narrative is based on them. It's like the antithesis of what it actually tried to be. And that's why I don't like moves.
Listen, I'm here with you. Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, cool.
I couldn't.
Right,
I have no ability to agree more than I do.
Yep. I also hate tags, and we'll get to that later. But we're still on the basics. But that was quick. So that's moves. Then we have stats. There's 6 stats. And this stat section is a much better explanation of the stats than when we get to the stat section later.
Then we get to the stat. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So the redundancies throughout is crazy. So the stats are cool, which means cool under fire, rational, clear thinking, and you roll plus cool to do something under fire. I love that explanation is right there. This is what I'm talking about. We needed more of this very clear, concise language on how to do the things that you're supposed to be doing, right? There's hard, which means hard-hearted, violent, aggressive, strong-willed, mean, and then you roll plus hard to go aggro on someone. And the go aggro on someone is bolded because that is a move you do later. Hot means fucking hot. Attractive, subtle, gracious, sexy, beautiful. You roll hot to seduce or manipulate someone. Sharp meaning sharp-witted, clever, smart, etc. You roll plus sharp to read a person or read a situation. Everything I'm saying at the end, you roll to do something. Those things are a move. Weird meaning a weirdo, psychic, genius, uncanny, all that stuff. Roll plus weird to open your brain to the world psychic maelstrom. And history meaning history. It's HX, like prescription diagnosis, particularly shared history. It's the history with other characters. I do really enjoy that mechanic, and we'll get to history later.
I thought that one was interesting, and we'll get to it when you're doing character creation, like the setup for it, how it's done. But I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's very narrative. You know, that's a good narrative rule.
I really like that, and it is how you advance. Is your history with other people and things like that. So, because you don't really advance, you just improve a little bit or do things a little bit differently. So those are the stats and the core moves to go with them. The maximum for any stat is +3. The minimum is -3. Most will be in a -1 to +2. And there's a notation here that says cool -2 means that your cool is -2. Weird equals 0 means that your weird is 0. There's a lot of fucking algebra in this where I'm like, there's too many letters that you didn't need. You could just say it. It's fine. History +1 means that your history with someone is +1. Some rules call for you to modify your stats, in which case the modifier appears before the stat name. So +1 cool means you add 1 to your cool. -2 weird means you subtract 2 from your weird. So there's a difference based on like whether you're just modifying the specific role you're doing versus modify or what your actual stats look like. That's not that complicated. It's fine. Each player highlights 2 of her character's stats. One chosen by another player, one chosen by you. This is another part that we'll get to. The MC one chosen by you, the MC. The character's development over time depends on her highlighted stats. For details, see the character creation chapter, page 70, which is hyperlinked, and the improvement chapter, page 258. Why is it listed 3 times? And why is one of the best explanations for how to actually do that in this section right here? Because when I got to highlighting stats later, I had to be like, wait, why do we highlight stats again? And literally like do like a control F to like find highlights so I could find this, and it's all the way up here. Yeah, so gear and other crap, you have gear. It has tags. I don't like tags. We'll get to tags later. Harm and healing, things get harmed and things heal, and there are clocks, and this is the worst way I like clocks. It actually uses like the numbers on a clock, which makes no sense to me. But you can harm stuff and you can heal stuff.
This is exactly where I needed some art, like clock example art, you know?
Yeah. Well, especially early on, if you're hitting the basics to do a little bit. But there's also times where they give you the little art that they do multiple times or in the wrong section. Character improvement, you mark experience mostly based on history or through moves, and your history with other people affects your experience bubbles. And when you get enough experience bubble, you can improve your character, which lets you, adjust things on your playbook. That's character improvement. Timeline of play. There's the pre-play prep, which is you getting our shit together. There's the first session, which is really just character creation. And then there's subsequent sessions. I know that the thing about like it takes 6 sessions to get going. I don't think so. I think it really takes, I know that they wrote that, but like from reading this, it sounds like it really takes maybe like 3. The first one being character creation. The second one being, there's a session you're going to talk about later where basically you just spend a whole session just kind of like walking around, interacting, getting to know people so you can like build narrative in the world. And then the third session where you really kind of get going. So I would say 3 sessions, but that doesn't feel like too much because one is character creation.
No, that feels fine. That feels like normal,
Yeah. There's a whole page of like why to play. I do like this.
Why to play was an interesting section, just to have,
Yeah. So number 1, because the characters are fucking hot. That's cool. A lot of this game is just like, it's the apocalypse and it's kind of a movie. So everyone's buff and hot and sometimes they fuck and they kill shit. And I'm like, cool, I'm down. Like, let's see how it goes.
That's the thing.
2, yeah. Because hot as they are, the characters are best and hottest when you put them together. Rivals, lovers, all that stuff. 3, because the characters are together against a horrific world. They're carving out their little space of hope. 4, because they're together, sure, but they're desperate and they're under a lot of pressure. 5, because there's something really wrong with the world, and I don't know what it is. The world wasn't always like this, blasted and brutal. There wasn't always a psychic maelstrom, so how do you figure out what to do? That doesn't really explain to me, like, why I want to play the game. That explains to me, like... But not, it does, but in a way that I expected to just be like, why would you play this game versus other games? But this is more of just like, what are you doing when you play the game? Like, you're being hot and you're being put into shitty situations and you're seeing if you can find hope in it, and that's cool. I dig it. Like I like that that's the basic section, and that's the basic section. So, cool rundown of the rules, but it's weird because there are parts of the quote unquote basic section that explain rules better than the sections explaining those rules.
And we're going to get to the sections and they'll be like, this is worse, actually.
Yeah. Another piece of art here. It's a buff chick with like a short haircut walking out of a car holding a machine gun. Dope, vibey. I dig it. This is the playbooks. Are we...
Yeah.
Hey, we're hitting this now, right?
I don't have any idea. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they're not really like they're just like a short blurb on each one. It's and then it's got all of them.
Yeah. So why don't we do just maybe skip the narrative at the top of part and just go with like the italics maybe on each one, so people can explain like what the class, what the archetypes actually are.
Also, an interesting thing here is that short blurb on each one is actually also on the like playbook stat page. It's really funny. It's like written here, and then so you're looking at the angel right now. What page is it on?
16.
It's also on page 23. So
if you're gonna have playbooks in this part, I think this is the part you have, and you take the actual character sheet playbook and put it in the back.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, you want to focus on one?
Well, let's focus on one for like actually reading through the character sheet. But do you want to just do like the quick maybe like mechanical blurb at the end of each one, so we just know all of the archetypes?
Yeah.
Or even just say like angels or medics, battle waves or this. You know what I mean? Like
angels or medics.
Yeah.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, Battle Babe is like a high social acumen warrior, you know, fighter. You're a sexy warrior.
There you go.
I don't know what a brainer is. What is a brainer?
Spooky weirdos.
Yeah, just weird, powerful, but strange.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. The Chopper leads a biker gang, which fairly interesting. They're powerful, but lots of their power is external in their gang, which is a kind of a cool rule thing that we'll get to. I a little bit skimmed that one. I was like, oh, okay. I kind of like the gang thing.
It's interesting, the ones that have like ingrained power, like the Chopper and the Heart Holder, that like come with a gang or come with a hold or something like that. It's interesting that you can pick a character that comes with so much as like a base character, because clearly there's a balance changes. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, and I've played another PbtA called I referred to it earlier, called Broken Worlds, and it has very much the same thing. It's like each of the character play books is like its own like epic thing, and they're a little unbalanced, and I kind of feel like this one's like a little unbalanced as well.
Fuck balance. I mean,
but
for a game that's like, built to be narrative,
I take no issue with that, because it's supposed to be narrative, right? Like the character I want to play maybe isn't this powerful gang leader. Maybe I want to play the next one, the driver. That's like a high mobility driver. You know, and vehicles are like a thing here, very much so. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts is way at the end where it talks about, hey, so someone told me that 50 years after the world ends, gasoline evaporates. Oops, I don't care. Like, pretend it's biodiesel. I'm just like, that is the best way to approach that, to just be like,
I
well,
agree.
it's a game. Yeah,
It's
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't need it to be that realistic. So
yeah.
Good to know about that 50-year life on gasoline, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so driver drives, high mobility, comes with a vehicle. Gun lugger. Can you guess what the gun lugger does, Ryan?
They probably lug guns, is my assumption.
I will say that I do appreciate the fact that you can read the name of the class and be like, I know what that class does.
Yeah.
You know, especially for a apocalyptic game. After the gun lugger, we have the hard holder. Hard holders are landlords, warlords, or governors. They have little strongholds. They got a little. They got land. And the hocus is a weird culty person that has it has more of the peripheral moves than anybody else. They're pretty much all for the hocus. So if you want to be a weird supernatural cult leader, the hocus is for you.
And of course there would be in the apocalypse. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Is it the Maestro D?
Bro, it broke my brain. I'm like, I googled Maestro D. I can find nothing called Maestro D, and what kept popping up, it's a Mater D.
A Mater D, yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why it's called a Maestro D. I really don't understand. Is it supposed to be like a play on like you're a maestros and you make things like you bring a lot of people together and do whatever? But I just kept reading as Mater D because I was like, that's what makes sense. Mater D is someone who runs an establishment.
You pretty much run an establishment, and I think what I do see here is like it's very much like the hard holder, except if you want it to be sexier with fewer obligations. Which okay, cool. I get that.
I love that. Basically, like you run like a drug den or a club or a strip joint or whatever. But like the hard holder is like basically a fort, so you have to deal with all the fort shit. But the Mater D, it's like a club. Like if you really just want to like grab the money and run, like who gives a shit? Like that's your thing. I really dig that there's like the hard holder for someone who wants to like, because if you do the hard holder, you're basically like, this is not a mobile game. Your whole thing is built around the fort.
Yes.
But with the Mater D, you could like start it like a strip club or whatever and maybe be able to come back to it, but it doesn't feel like you're tied to it nearly as much. So I really like that. I think it's neat.
Yeah, I do too. And then is the Savvy Head the last one? No, it's not. There's the Skinner after that. Savvy Head is your like support tech person, powerful, reality bending. Yeah, seems cool. And then the Skinner. Skinners are pure hot. This is your face, your manipulative face character. Yeah. And then we have a list of the basic moves right here.
For like the first of like 8 times.
Yeah, a very great, concise list. I actually didn't count the moves.
Well, I mean, they're the basic moves, but there's 1,000 more.
Yeah, so 10. 10 basic moves. That's including session end. And they all are kind of like self-explanatory, but we're going to explain them anyway here in a little bit. Yeah, and then we have the actual like mechanical playbooks.
In a place that on page 22 for like 50 pages.
It's so weird. Put these in the back. Like
this book is just it's so weirdly put together in a short thing like a zine or whatever. When things are kind of like out of order, it's not a big deal because you're only reading like 30 pages. But when you're reading 300 pages, having things out of order makes it so hard to parse what's important and what's not. And having things not written in the way that like the game flows, like it should be the basics, all the moves, harm and healing, gear and crap, like the things that actually really affect play. And then if you want to do like the MC section, we'll get to a little bit, like put that, like start with the second half of the game that's more about running the game, you know what I mean? Like it's just, but it's so interspersed, so again chopped up, and so many times there's just randomly a core move is like tucked into a subsection of a subsection. It's like anyway. Did you want to run through one of these now, or maybe like later once we read more about like what's going on?
Let's run through the Battle Babe real quick, because I feel like that was the one we said that we were going to focus on. So the character sheet, the playbook, right? It starts with all of them. The first page, I think, is exactly the same for all. It's your basics, like your name, your look, your stats, your history, and then it has your character special. So Battle Babe special, right under the history section. If another character has sex, nullify the other character's sex move. Whatever it is, just does not happen. That's right. They're sex moves.
Yeah. Your special move is a sex move. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's your harm clock, bottom left. And then the improvement section. And that's the first page. The second page.
I will say real quick, I do like on this, on the stat section, it lists the moves that are associated with that stat next to the stat. So that does make it a little bit easier when you actually have the playbook in front of you.
I agree.
To kind of associate that, and the little sections to like highlight and whatnot.
Yeah, so the second of, is it 4 pages? The second of the 4-page playbook. It really is like a playbook. Like, it tells you.
Playbook, not a play sheet. Playbook, for sure.
It tells you in the first session part, which we'll get to have printouts for these. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you most definitely need printouts for each of these because it's unplayable without that. Yeah, so the Battle Babe has the blurb. You read it if you want to, but also get the book. And it has Battle Babe moves, which are the like specific Battle Babe moves. I don't want to read them. It's dangerous and sexy, ice cold, merciless, visions of death, perfect instincts, and impossible reflexes.
I think you picked like maybe 2 in character creation. We'll get to that in character creation.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. We'll come back. Maybe. And then custom weapons, firearms and hand weapons. A little place to write down your custom weapons. Gear and barter section. And then a barter section that explains how barter works, which we'll also look at later on in the book. Actually, super okay with this being here in the playbook too. And barter is like an optional thing. If you have a world that doesn't make sense for bartering, there is no bartering, but I do like that it's there. And on the last page of the playbook, you have the creating a battle babe, which arguably maybe not the last page of the playbook. But what do I know? Yeah, name, stats, gear, look, moves, history. Yeah, it's here.
Yeah. What, like, actually putting it together should be like the first or second page.
I agree. So
yeah. So I don't know. It's just, again, it's just weird how this whole thing is put together. But yeah, so it's a 4-page character sheet, which is fine because a lot of it is just explaining,
right,
which I think is really good to have in front of you.
Yeah,
but honestly,
I think it's a strength, that part.
But here's the thing is, like, if you're going to have this much information here, you know what I would chop off this entire barter section. And you know what I would have right here? The section up at the top where it talks about stats and then gives you what the stat is and what move you roll for that stat and what it normally is would literally drop right into this exact amount of space. And I would much rather have right in front of me a quick reference to like the moves that I need to do than something like barter, which is an optional rule.
Yeah, I mean, they do have the moves next to the stats already, right?
Yeah, but a little bit of an explain. I mean, if you're going to use this space for something, I would rather have it be for that to give me again another little break.
Yeah, I could probably think of another
rule.
There's several other things that you could do with that space. I agree. Yeah, so that's the playbook. I do think the fact that it has explanations for stuff is actually the strongest part of the playbook.
Yep.
I think its placement in this book is the weakest part.
Why are there 50 pages of playbooks, like 20 pages in? Put them at the back of the book. Like, I get it in the context of like we're talking about character creation, but like you already have blurbs for what they are. Right. This is more of a resource management thing than it is like a necessary thing to read right now. So stick it in the back.
Yeah. So yeah, moving forward.
I'm trying to.
I know. I'm scrolling down too. I'm like, Jesus, what page am I on?
Yeah, bookmarks. Here we go. Character creation. There we go. Page 70.
Character creation. Yeah. So a big thing that's going to say here that it also says in the first session is that you want to print out the players' reference sheets and put them on a table where everyone can reach them, pass them around. That should help. Print out your play sheets, threat mat, threat sheets, all that stuff. One thing that I do like about this is that they're kind of like epic characters. Like there's only one of each, you know, everyone picks one character, and I really like that. I like that there's a little bit of a spread. Each character is they're the one, that thing, you know. I do think it's a strength of this narratively.
Absolutely. The part where it's like there's other people that might be healers and someone might call them angel, but you're the angel. They're not the angel.
You're the angel, you know. And I like that, and I've seen that adapted in a lot of PbtA stuff. But I'm like, oh, that's cool. You're the sorcerer, you know. Like everyone else maybe uses magic, but you're the magic guy. I
do dig that. It definitely feeds into like the cinematic, you know, kind of like
totally. The strong point of this. Say this first and often. I can't even remember what this part says, honestly. To the players, your job is to play the characters as though they are real people in whatever circumstances they find themselves. Cool, competent, dangerous, larger than life, but real. And then the job as the MC is to be the world.
Everybody else.
The apocalypse happened 50 years ago. No one really knows. There's a psychic maelstrom. Stats. Have y'all heard about stats yet?
For the second time. Yeah.
Actually, I think this is the third time. Because we skimmed through at the end of the playbook section. It actually has stats again. And basic moves. On page like 66 or something like that. Stats are here. One other thing it does add here is that like they'll cap out at -3 or +3. You don't go higher or lower than that. and that they can occasionally get an extra point, I guess, just circumstantially. Yeah. Introducing basic moves, which is the second or third time it's referred to, but this is not the basic move section because that's coming up.
And we can look at it in the basic move section.
We'll look at it there. There's special moves. There's character moves, which are like character specific. Vehicles and prosthetics. When you're creating a vehicle, it basically gives you a list of frames to pick, which will affect the stats. A list of strengths, which are a bunch of tags, a list of looks, which are a bunch of tags, a list of weaknesses, which are a bunch of tags, and then battle options, which are according on your frame. You basically get like some pluses for whatever frame you pick. Like if you pick a compact vehicle, it gets 2 battle options, and you pick 2 of these. You can just pick the same one twice and level up, so you can be like, yeah, I have a fucking fast as fuck buggy, bro. I got +2 speed. Yeah.
And what's great is it talks about vehicles and prosthetics here, but then when we get to gears and crap, we once again talk about vehicles and prosthetics, but explained in a different way with some of the stuff you need and some of the stuff that you don't need.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's specialized vehicles, because one of the character classes is like my other car is a tank, which gives you special options. Then there's creating prosthetics, which is the same as the vehicle. Essentially, it's a bunch of tags. Yeah, and then setting expectations, which is just talking to your player characters, your PCs, and setting expectations, which is great.
It's like
you should do that.
This is the part that like I think now would just be like use safety tools, you know?
Yeah, have sex moves. Yeah, there's that, and then introduction. It's kind of go around and introduce your character thing. And
I will say to wind back just a little bit to the last one, like this is exactly what I'm talking about. There's like 10 bullet points, but like some of them are like talking about rules, and then the very next one is literally like randomly like asking a question if it's a player, and randomly like talking as if you're the MC. It's just like, hey, see where it says this or whatever? It literally says, this is what the book actually says. Hey, see where it says you have oddments worth 3 barter or whatever? Is there some medium exchange you all like? It's literally being like, you should talk this way, but then it also talks that way back to you. It's just such a weirdly
hey, I don't know you like that, buddy. Talk to me like a book.
Right?
Yeah. And then there's, the introduction, which is going around in a circle and introducing your characters. And there's a little bit more introduction than some games that I would run, because the history is a stat here. And that's actually, I think the next section is history. Yeah. And so your player character basically goes around in a circle and decides whether or not that character, they trust them or don't trust them. And they give themselves a bonus or a negative to their history. Which I think is really interesting. It's cool to go around and be like, that's an interesting character. My character wouldn't trust that guy very much,
Yeah. Well, it's not even just on trust too. It's also on like how well you know the people just in general. So it's like we've been in a gang forever. Let's add a +1, or like I just met you and I don't like you, so we're gonna do a -1.
Yeah. Very cool. You leverage that later on, which we'll get to whenever we get to moves.
Yeah. Crazy.
Oh yeah, and here's highlighting stats. I don't know how I missed this part, because I actually did not read this highlighting stats section.
Yep. Yeah. This is like the third or fourth. This is one of the 3 or 4 instances that we'll talk about highlighting stats, but in a completely different way than 2 of the other ones.
Yeah, you go around the table one last time. Each player finds the character her character knows best, or the highest history on their own sheet, and then that character says which stat is most interesting to her and highlights.
Well, that's important through the entire thing with the highlighting the stats. Like as you build your histories with people, like at the beginning of each section, Like if I know history, if I have the most history with you, you pick a stat for me to highlight, and then the MC also picks a stat.
Another one.
Everyone gets 2 every session, and then you mark experience whenever you roll the stat that was highlighted. So that's literally how you advance or improve in the entire game, is by rolling for the stats that other people highlighted. So if I want to be like, well, I feel like I want you to be hard today, like I check hard for you, right? But if it's like, well, I feel like you want to be cool, and then MC could also be like, well, I think we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff today, and I want you to improve, so I'll mark cool for you. It's really interesting, because even in the example of play we'll talk about later, it literally says, hey, like it says that you can literally ask, like, hey, can you highlight this stat for me? And I'm like, if you're getting to a point where you're asking someone to highlight the stat, just pick your own fucking stats to highlight.
Yeah.
But it also then says the MC goes, nah, I'll highlight this one instead. And it's just like, well, like, then what are we doing? You know? So what are we fucking doing?
Yeah.
So the next section is the Master of Ceremonies, which again, I don't understand why this is here. I don't understand why this is like the 3rd or 4th thing. This is literally like a whole chapter on like directly written for the MC, the Master of Ceremonies, which is basically your GM.
I think my issue is that immediately after this, we have the first session section, which should in fact be in this section, like with the like.
That's what I'm saying. Like the book really needs to be parsed into like a Master of Ceremonies section, which is like half of it, because you're literally talking specifically to the Master of Ceremonies, the MC, and a player section. But why is the entire like MC section in the middle of what the players need, both before and after it? The sections are just poorly put together. Again, when a book is shorter, it doesn't matter as much because it's not as hard to get to those things, but when it's 300 pages, it really matters because you have to get through all those pages to get to the other stuff. So the Master of Ceremonies, quick breeze through this. MC, that is Apocalypse World's GM. There's a million ways to GM. Apocalypse Worlds calls for one way in particular. This chapter is it. Follow these as rules. The whole rest of the game is built on this. So it says you have to read this section and play it exactly like this, which is so weird to me as far as like TTRPGs go, to be like, this is how it has to be. So your agenda: make Apocalypse World seem real, make the players' characters' lives not boring, and play to find out what happens. And then there's so much talking in such an extraordinarily conversational way. It's just, it makes it difficult to not, again, bounce off of this. Don't pre-plan a storyline. It says don't do any of that, but then there's so much prep that it talks about doing, and like so much other things to do. So it's a weird kind of like, don't do this, but like kind of do it a little bit, you know. Play to find out what happens. Always say these things: what the principles demand, what the rules demand, what your prep demands, and what honesty demands. This is a section that's, I think, put together a little bit better than other sections, even though I think there's too much talking, because at the very least, the important things are bolded at the top of the sections.
That is nice.
So that is nice. So Apocalypse Worlds divides a conversation up in a strict and pretty traditional way. Players' job is to say what the characters say. First and exclusively to say what the characters think, feel, and remember. Secondly, answer questions. Your job as MC is to say everything else, everything about the world, blah, blah, blah. You're the MC. Always be scrupulous, generous, with the truth. Play the game. Don't hide shit from people. Give people, be a fan of the players, do all of that. That's what it basically says. And then it has the principles. There's a lot of principles here. Barf forth apocalyptica. Okay. Address yourself to the characters, not the players. I do like some of these principles. I think they're really good. Make your move, but misdirect. Make your move, but never speak its name. Look through crosshairs. Name everyone. Make everyone human. Ask provocative questions and build on the answers. Respond with fuckery and intermittent rewards. Be a fan of the player's characters. Think off-screen too. Sometimes disclaim decision-making. So barf forth apocalyptica just means be very narrative with everything that you're doing. Like make the world feel real. Address yourself to the characters, not the players. I really like this. If you want people to engage more with the game narratively, address their player. Don't say, hey, Hunter, what are you doing? Say, hey, Billy Bo, Mishnuggins, what are you doing?
Which is exactly the name I pick.
Yeah. Which would encourage you to respond as your player, which will keep people in the narrative more. It's a great rule to have for all tabletop role-playing games because you are role-playing. So that's a good one. Make your move, but misdirect. I don't mind this one. It's fine. It basically says, like, do stuff, but then do other stuff. So you have real world reasons for picking a move, but then the consequences and things that come from that move should always create more. Make your move, but never speak its name. I like that too. So if there's a move called announce future badness, don't say, okay, so now I'm going to announce future badness. Of course, you're not going to do that. You are the narrative. So like you should really play as if you're the narrative. Don't let the mechanical side of the MC side like overtake the game, because again, the way you write a game, but also the way that you run a game will encourage people's style of play. So if all you're doing is saying move names, that'll encourage people to say move names back to you, you know? Look through crosshairs. Basically it says start with everything being a threat. Like always, you know, that might not always be what you eventually do, but look at it that way to start. It's apocalypse world. Shit's fucked up. So think about burning it down, blowing it up, or burying it in a poison ground. And then if that's not the right thing to do, peel it back a little bit. Name everyone, make everyone human. I do like this section. It's too fucking wordy, but it basically says like NPCs are a huge chunk of the world. So make those NPCs feel real. And it also says NPCs are just not that complicated. If you have some dude who's evil just because they feel like being evil, that's fine. Like not every NPC in the world needs to have a novel as a backstory. Just make them be what they are, because it's much easier to engage in a tabletop role-playing game when you're really engaging with what amounts to like archetypes, as opposed to like these very deep people. For important NPCs, obviously have more depth to them, but not every single person in your world needs to have that. But every single person in your world should have something, is what it really says. And it also talks about these PC like triangles, whether it's a love triangle or not. There's a really good example here where it talks about at some point about one character wanting an NPC for one thing and another character wanting the NPC for a different thing, and the interactions that can come PC versus PC when they're both vying for the same thing, but for different reasons. So that's a really cool thing to do, is those triangles. Ask provocative questions, build on the answers. That's self-explanatory. It explains a lot though. Respond with fuckery and intermittent rewards, as in fuck around with, not fuck over. This is when you barf apocalyptica onto someone's answer, but do it all the time. And then how about an example? Again, there's just so much writing about this very casual, over-explainy, like here's just examples throughout. And I like that there's examples throughout, but like they're so scattered that it makes it so unconcise and difficult to parse every time. When it's like, I just want to know what the rule says. And you have to read through so much to get to it.
Please just tell me the rule.
Be a fan of the player's and this is the MC section. So this is the part that I don't mind over explaining the MC section. I like examples of play. This is a part where all of that should be. The problem is this is how the entire book is written. Like when you're explaining a rule, please start at the very least with giving me the rule, and then explain too much if you really feel the need to. But in the MC section, I'm fine with this. But that means so much of this book, just like in Blades of the Dark, should have been shunted off of the rule section and then just put into the MC section. You know? Be a fan of the player's characters. Obviously, you should always be that. If you're adversarial, this ain't the fucking 80s. Don't be a fucking douche. Think off screen too. Self-explanatory. Sometimes disclaim decision-making. In order to find out what happens, you'll need to pass decision-making off sometimes, which I do find interesting. And one of the things I do like about PbtA, put it into the NPC's hands, put it into the player's hands, create a countdown, make it a stakes question. So basically, you don't always have to make every decision. Make the decision something that needs to be interacted with, something that needs to be determined by the players or by other people. Basically, don't make major decisions if you don't have to. Put it into other mechanics or people so that the decision always feels like it comes from the players. And then another breakdown of all of the another list of all the principles. I don't mind some repetitiveness, but it literally starts a chapter and ends a chapter with the same list.
I think it's hard because there's already been so much repetition that even in a place where maybe the repetition has value, it's like you're kind of tired. You're kind of tired of it already. Like, oh,
so tired of it.
Come on, man.
Then there's a whole list of Gia moves. Separate them, capture someone, put someone in a spot, trade harm for harm, announce off-screen badness, announce future badness, inflict harm, take away their stuff, make them buy, activate their stuff downside, tell them the possible consequences, ask an opportunity with or without a cost, turn the move back on them, make a throw move. After every move, what do you do? So much of this is often throughout, I was like, that's not a move. I don't understand. But this is a part where I'm like, these aren't moves. Some of these are just principles. Like, I don't like, there was such an emphasis on like the creation of this idea of moves that I feel like it's just too much. Like, I think it started really good and it went way too fucking far. Not everything is a move, but they make everything a move in here. And it makes it hard when you want to do something that's not necessarily a move because you feel like there's so many moves, everything is a move, so you have to figure out how it's a move, you know.
Yeah, we've talked about this with other games, especially 5e. It's just like when you create the box, they're going to color within the lines, you know, like they're not really going to step outside of the lines because you've written it in a way that, like, even me playing a PbtA, I'm like, oh, I'm looking for the moves to do, you know.
And that's the thing. And the GM, I guess it's a little bit, you know, because the GM's play does need to be a little bit more structured because you are running the game. So I don't mind the moves as much for that. But and I like the moves for special stuff. I like moves for powers and things like that. But for basic shit, when you have 10 basic moves, you're like, well, everything must fall into a basic move then. So quick run through of the GM's basic moves. Announce off-screen badness. Okay, that you're announcing examples of your moves. Separate them. Okay, you separate them. Capture someone. You capture them. But here's the other thing about the moves, right? Is that in the player's moves, there's always like a 7 to 9, like 10 plus, like 6 or less. But in the GM moves, quote unquote moves, it's not. It's really just like an option of something that you can do narratively. Yeah. So I guess calling it a move but that then also makes your brain go, wait, but are moves like this or moves like that? And it's different because it's a GM and player, but it still makes it more difficult to parse trying to understand the game. But this list of moves is a good thing for anyone to just write down for any game because these are all just like cool narrative points that you can use in your game. Separate someone, capture someone, put someone in a spot, trade harm. There's a section later in the harm section where it talks about trading harm and how that works. Inflicting harm. Also, there's a section later talking about that. Take away their stuff. That's a lot of these are really just like choice mechanics. You know, a lot of these I've read from Source of Victory where it breaks down a lot of this stuff into like creating player choice, create narrative, do things that way. So taking away their stuff is a great one. Separating people's a great one. Make them buy. So if they need something, encourage them that they have to go buy it. Then they have to go to a whole different area and encourage, you know, people's barter and stuff. Activate their stuff downside. So a cursed item, make it cursed, you know, make the curse pop in. Tell them possible consequences. I do like that where it's like, are you sure you really want to do that? This is what's going to happen. And they're like, actually, no, I don't want to. Offer an opportunity with or without cost, turn their move back on them, or make a threat move. And we'll get to that later. So those are all the things you can do as a GM. Obviously, you can do more, but those are cool breakdowns. I don't mind that section for moves in here. I just like the basic moves. Rules and prep. The game's rules give you things to say. Yep, they do. And then there's a whole section on a few more things to do, which is just a section that I just don't like. These aren't principles or moves. They're just good practice, and I recommend them. Then don't put them here. Or like, I just don't understand. Like in the MC section again, I don't mind this nearly as much. It's basically just like. But again, you get to parts in here where it's like, I don't think this is a section yet, but it literally goes, in my home game, I usually do this. Then just say to do that. Like, people can parse that if it doesn't work for them, that's fine, you know? You know, it's whatever. And then we get to the first session.
First session. You know, it's basically like a session 0 almost. Like it is a session 0.
That's all it is. Yeah.
It's session 0. It's prep. Well,
yeah. Well, so the first session, is character creation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's character creation, and it's also time for you as the MC to prep based on what your player characters pick as their characters. You do the history thing. Did I take notes in this section? Look at me, I didn't. It literally says in my notes it says summarize per session. It says summarize per session, and then it's blank. I had a hard time reading this book because there's so much conversation. So I really did jump around like quite a bit. But yeah, there's this weird part like during the first session where it's like you tell them like, okay, your setup's easy and you're done, but now I gotta sit here and set up. A couple of you groaned.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, why do we need
what
any
the fuck
of
are we
this?
doing there?
They literally wrote into the book like an extremely casual conversation between MCs and players, but not in like an example of how the first session might run. It's literally just written in. So like the rules and things you're supposed to do are suddenly like interspersed with like random quotations of like casual conversation, and then like.
Yeah.
I just don't like exactly what you said. A couple of you groaned. I could hear you from way over here. Oh, great! Getting to know the characters. That's a recipe. It's like, it's like fucking Jack Kerouac, like fucking inner monologue. This isn't like Tropic of Capricorn. Like it feels like just almost like what's it called when you just like blah, you're trying to thought down on a paper. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's a writing activity. It's
You know, people out there know what we're saying, but basically that's what it feels like. It feels like they were just like writing, and they're like, "Oh, sometimes they'll say this, da 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 da." Like it's just so like there's a too much technical writing is bad, but not enough is just as bad.
Yeah, yeah. And it talks about like, you know, it's your job as the MC to create this like fractured, tilting landscape of inequalities. PC and PC triangles, all that good stuff. After that, it's first and always do everything. First and always do everything it says to do in the Master of Ceremonies chapter. Do all of it. This is crucial. Let's just follow the characters around for a day. In Apocalypse World, that's automatically dangerous. It's automatically a bad day. I think I disagree with that. I don't know. Yeah, just because it's the first session, whatever, you're still actually playing the game. The thing about this tone of like, yeah, whatever, you know, it makes me internally also feel like, yeah, whatever, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, they're not taking this shit seriously. Like, I'm not fucking taking it seriously. You know, and I know we joke about longer books. I read Lancer. So it's not just that this is a long book, you know, it's just
the way it's just the way it's
written.
Yeah.
MC the game, bring it, but especially do these, which are, I think, exactly the MC things, right? Yeah. Barforth, Apocalyptica, Springboard of character creation. Ask questions all the time. Good stuff. I think there's definitely good stuff in here. And it's going to go and give us a description of all of those things that we just that are in that list. And a lot of this is a recap of the previous section.
Kind of. I mean, it's basically going through like GM principles and stuff. Until you get to the part.
There's a little bit of divergence, or there's a little couple of different things, but like it still is very referential to that previous. Yeah.
Until you get to the part at the end where it talks about the threat map, which I'm like, the very next section is threats, so I don't understand why there's literally like 2 pages in the first session that talk about the threat map. And if you notice, the example threat map that's in the first section is the exact same example threat map that is almost immediately used in the threat section. So once again, why are they in both parts? Why are they explained differently in both parts? And like, what's like, I don't understand why it's not like work on the threat map, see the threat map section. Like there's just like 3 pages we don't need when we're seeing them again in like 10 pages.
It is really interesting. It's literally, I mean, it's immediately after.
Immediately. Yeah. So, I mean, we need to talk about threats when we get to the threat section, but I just don't understand why that's in the first section. Like, it just makes...
I think referring to it and being like, hey, like work on threats and maybe a couple of notes, but hey, see more in 1 page.
Yeah. It's just, it's just really, it is what it is.
So after the first section, once again, it's like really weird tone, not like immediately after. Give it some time to sink in.
That's literally that's a quote from the book, not like immediately. What?
I don't know.
Like I felt like they were like maybe trying to go for some type of like character thing, but it literally just feels like the creator just like again like just like I can't remember what it's called, just spewing forth like a train of thought onto the page, and they literally just wrote in such a casual way. Like, you remember the part where we talked about earlier or whatever? Do that thing. Like that could be a quote in this book.
Yeah. It basically says after the first section to just go back over the session in your head and review things that happen and create new threats and like NPC and like forward think, which is great advice to put in the Maestro, the MC section. Weird that it's in this section.
Well, this is for the MC, which then why not just put that all up into the MC section?
That's what I'm saying. It is for the MC, but yeah. Like, here's the thing is like, MC, first session, and threats. So those 3 sections are all MC stuff, and then we get to moves, which is general. Like, we should have taken moves and boosted them all up. This should actually be towards the end of the book.
All of it should be at the end.
Yeah.
MC section, threat section, playbooks, like all of that. Like there needs to be a really big separation between stuff players need and stuff MC needs. But again, it feels like the MC stuff is like stuffed right in the middle of the sandwich of what the player needs, which forces the player to read the whole fucking book. Like, I don't know. All right, getting to threats. Let's cruise through threats real quick. They are threatening. That is it. There's a whole page here just talking about creating threats and doing threat stuff. There are essential threats. And among the threats you create after the first and second sections, be sure to create your essential threats. They are for where the PCs are, created as a landscape. For any PC gangs, create them as brutes. For any PCs and other NPCs, create them as brutes. We'll get to that in a section. Again, it's whatever. So to create a threat, choose its name it, and copy it. Copy over its impulse. Describe it and list its cast, if any. Place it on the threat map. If it's in motion, mark its direction with an arrow. List its stakes questions, if any. If it's connected to other threats, list them. And if it calls for a custom move or countdown, create it. So there's a threat sheet here, which basically gives like what it's called, what kind it is, what its impulse is, what its description cast is, the stakes, written down for custom moves, its countdown clock, and then like a little mini version of the threat map, which I'll get to in a second, about like where it might be and whatnot. And there are 7 kinds of threats. There are warlords, grotesques, afflictions, brutes, landscapes, terrain, and vehicle. Those are the different kinds of threats you can have on the threat map. Warlords are exactly what warlord sounds like. They're dictators, slavers, all those kind of things. They are the bad combat-y people. And then there's a whole list of threat moves that warlords can do. Push the battle moves, outflank someone, attack someone directly. There's like 10 things for each one. I'm not going to go through all of them. Just going to go through like examples. That's exactly what it is. Warlords act primarily through their people. Okay, grotesques are always human. It says they're always a person, not a monster, but they are now grotesque, like cannibals, mutants, and things like that. There's a whole list of threat moves for them. There's afflictions, which are diseases, conditions, and things like that. Once again, there's a whole list of threat moves for them. Brutes are a group of people with or without a leader acting in crude, perhaps provisional concert. So hunting packs, things like that. List of threat moves for brutes. There's landscapes, which is natural or constructed landscape. You choose the kind. There's prisons, breeding pits, furnaces, mirages. A list of threat moves for those. There's terrain, which is a precipice, a wall, an overhang, something in the way. I don't understand really. Terrain is a little different than landscape, I think, because landscape is more of like kind of specific places in the land, like specifically like a fortress, a maze, a prison. Terrain is more like, I said a wall, a precipice, things like that. So the names can be a little bit confusing on that one. There's vehicles, which you talked about before. There's different types of vehicles, and once again, a huge list of threat moves that you can do with vehicles. I don't again, for the MC section on threats, I don't mind this because it really breaks down like what you can do in like an interesting way. So like, you know, that for vehicles, if they're vicious, a move is swerve across the road though. So it's like, okay, it really is just saying narratively all the different things you can do. So again, it makes moves feel like they can be pretty much anything. Threat moves.
Foundational cornerstone of this game. Anything's a move.
Yeah. Pushing a move just means saying, for instance, hey, this is a charged situation. I think somebody should read it. Who wants to? Or he's acting kind of weird. Don't you think? Want to read him? Or there are like 50 of them roaring and swinging their meat knives and rushing a car. Do you want to fight or hold your position or ditch out or what? Like, but so that really didn't explain to me what pushing is at all. And that's really one of the first and only times they really talk about pushing. Like, pushing the roll means, or pushing a move means this is more than just a regular situation and more than just regular shit needs to happen from it. Right?
Yeah. I'm trying to see. Hold on. I have another PbtA game open at the same time, and I know there is pushing in this one. Where is it? Push. Look at that. It's a couple paragraphs and it's got a bolded top. When you attempt something particularly, yeah. Okay, cool.
Right? Yeah. It's again, like, it's just all the rules are so conversationally written into the thing that there at no point are they pulled out and explained in any meaningful way. It's more just like ranted at you, and you should somehow in these 2 pages, by the context of the rant, understand it.
It's also funny because like this one page has a one bolded thing, which just is almost out of context, and it's just a weird bolded thing. And I'm like, I'm so used to the first time we go through a game, I'll skim it and I'll read everything that's bolded, because usually that's like the core mechanics. And this one was like, display the contents of a grotesque heart. I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about? Exactly.
There is nothing about the way this game is written that gives you the important parts as if they're important. Like, the only things that are bolded in the entire thing are moves. Every move in this game is freaking bolded. Like, that's really it. But not the rules. They're not even italicized. They're very rarely separated into parts that are more parsable. It's just like, again, pushing is an important thing, and it's just randomly at the beginning of like a page here, but no real explanation. Almost immediately just goes into some examples, but no real explanation, like, at all. Like, I don't know. I mean, the game is explained through a series of conversational examples, not through any technical jargon, like, pretty much at all, is what it comes down to. So it's all supposed to be just contextual understanding. So an editor and a dev editor that does a little bit more technical writing would have been really good for this. Because I'm getting to the point where we're skipping stuff. I don't even care. Description and cast. You describe stuff. Like, describe the stakes. Like, I mean, so the threat map is an important bit here. I don't mind the threat map. I think it's kind of interesting. I don't think it's interesting. So, and countdown clocks, custom moves. I thought we would get to the threat map. Example threat maps. Again, this is the exact same threat map as what's under the first section, literally like in their previous section. So when you look at the threat map, because that is an actual core part of the game that should be explained a little bit better, you mark the map. You mark in the map the threat's location and if it's moving and its direction. So the innermost circle is the PCs. Their gangs are holding their vehicles. Then there's like a second, the first ring is threats that are near the PCs. The outer ring is threats that are at and past the PC's horizons. And then there's notional threats, which are rumors, fears, like here be monster section or whatever. And then marked on the map, there is north, south, east, west. So it's actually like physically what's on the map. But then there's also U and D, which is up and down for threats above and below the characters. Okay. There's I, which is inside for threats within local landscapes and populations, like cults, diseases, and parasites. And there's O, which is outside for threats originating in the world, psychic maelstrom, or even elsewhere. There's too many of those things. When we get to tags, when we start talking about like in -1, inside plus this, like, it's just like it created all of this stuff that could be better explained through other things. Like
That's
I don't.
So weird. It is so bizarre. Like, I think conceptually I like the threat map. Like, until you add the IUDO, like, I'm like, making a map and like having threats like mapped out and like where they are in relation to you and like moving towards or away. I'm like, very cool. And you're like, yeah, that part, and you're like, I'm out. So
yeah, dude, as soon as I think they just wanted to fill in the parts of like the thing, because if you on the same map have directions and which threats are, right? But interspersed between those directions, you have these like kind of like conceptual ideas, like diseases or things like that. Like what if something's northeast of me?
Oh, no, it's only north or east of you. Like there is no northeast.
So you have both a directional map and a conceptual map in the same space. So I don't
so you think divided up, you could see 2 threat maps being cool, like a.
I think either have 2 threat maps, right? Or for like use the threat map as an actual map. Okay, so like keep your locations on there and then keep the circles be the things that are important. But these like conceptual bits like local landscapes and threats originating from psychic maelstrom and things like that, things that are up or down or whatever, just put a list underneath.
Yeah.
Just do 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath the map for the things that aren't actually location based. And if it is a location based thing, like the cult is to the north and it's outside, then put it there. But if it's something
not
that
northwest,
like,
so just
right, that's I don't like this overlay of both conceptual and physical in the same map when it's weird because it can cross into both. Just have 2 separate maps, one for more conceptual, one for more location based, or just put it underneath, because there is a list of things underneath the threat maps when you actually go down to the threat map. Or you don't even need to do that really, because you can actually just number the threats and write it on their little threat card, right? Because you're supposed to put a little dot where that threat is. But again, like to me, the threat map is a physical location map, and that's what works better in my brain. But when you actually look on the thing here, so the other thing that's interesting about the example map, right? Do you see anything written in up, down, in, or out?
There's the one thing in, right?
There's like one thing written on one example for like what's out. It says Angels Hunting Pack. So like, and the in and out isn't like, so it's just like, okay, but there's nothing written on up, down, or any of these. So it's like you put it on the map, and then in none of the explanations, like none of the examples are any of those sections even actually used, except for one, which is used, the same thing is used twice on 2 different examples. So it's just like, you don't even give an example of like how those things are really applicable, but there's like an I wonder section underneath. So like, why wouldn't there just be like conceptual or like things to keep track of, or like, you know, outsider threats or whatever, like this disease is present, you know, like it just doesn't make sense to me that like you create this thing, put these 2 random like things together, and then don't even give examples when the whole thing is based on conceptual examples. So countdown clocks. I'm going to go through countdown clocks, and then we're just going to start skipping the rest of this book because I just can't. So countdown clocks, I don't like the way these work. I like clocks. Yeah, I got it. And then so the way countdown clocks work, I don't even think they're explained here. I think we can just get to it later. They're not even like no, this isn't even the part. So it kind of explains countdown clocks a little bit. Around the clock notes, things will happen before 9 o'clock. That thing's coming, but preventable. So this is countdown clocks in the context of like, as the threat's approaching, but like not in the way that like HP works or anything like that. Right. I don't mind the way it works, but I also don't need like the numbers on them. Like I like clocks written out more like tracks, kind of like the way Necronihilus does. Like if in eight rounds something's going to happen, I'll make an 8-round clock and mark a segment off each time. It's really, I don't know. I don't necessarily like the way clocks work in this, but we're not going to talk about them right now. So that's the end of threats. Moves snowball. This is a whole huge section that just says that when you do a move, sometimes it triggers another move that triggers another move. That's literally the whole thing. That could literally just be like a tiny paragraph. That's it. Instead, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages to just be like, sometimes moves triggers other moves. That happens. You can have a series of moves. This, like, I want to love this game, the core mechanics of it. Like the PbtA style game is like my favorite game, but reading this book, it's breaking my brain, and it's so frustrating.
Sorry, there are no core mechanics. Do not make something PbtA, just by the way.
it hurts my soul. Like that's what's so frustrating. Same thing with Blades in the Dark, where it's just like I feel like there's such a good system mixed into just such a bad book, and it's really, really frustrating and it's also so hard to sit and read. Like like both of us, and this isn't, terrible ADHD. So like having to sit down and like really force yourself to try to parse something, it makes it so frustrating, and it just builds up this hate in me, so that like I might love something, but the way that it's like communicated to me makes me just hate it, and it's hard.
Yeah. It's weird because like right now I'm for fun reading like the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, which are like 1,200 page densely packed books, and I have a fine time reading those, and I've read Lancer and I really enjoyed it, and I've read Broken Worlds, which is another fairly thick PbtA book, and I really liked that. I don't like how this one's written, so I'm not gonna blame my ADHD on this one. I think physically the way that last classic that we did, help me out, I'm blank, Blades. Blades
my God.
The way that physically was written also was just hard for me to break up. This one has a lot more space and has a lot more like breathing room. I just didn't like reading it.
No. I want to, we keep going over these like classics, right? That so many systems are built on, right? We're doing Apocalypse World right now. We did Blades in the Dark. We did Black Hack. And just every time I feel like we just get to the progenitor of these like massive trees of games within our system, and they just don't like the original game. And a lot of it just comes down to like how it's communicated. And it's just frustrating, and it makes me also go, you know what? Like maybe there's a reason that there's like 50 PbtA games and I've never heard of someone playing Apocalypse World. You know what I mean? Like I've never heard someone say Black Hack, but I've seen a lot of Black Hack hacks. So, Anyway, PC versus PC, it happens. Like, guess what? It all works the same as everything else. That's basically all it says. Then we get to the basic moves. Okay, so we're talking about 136 pages in. We're actually going to finally talk about what amounts to the core mechanic of the entire game, and the 4th time, 5th time, 6th times it's mentioned, and written in a different way than every other time.
Yeah, it actually has explanation, which we're not going to read all the explanation for everything because we don't need every use case for everything. But so basic moves. This is a partial success system.
Oh, yeah, I thought I was doing basic moves. Go for it.
Oh, I just didn't read snowball moves because I read all that text. I saw all the text and I was like, no. But basic moves, it's you roll 2d6 plus stat, and it 6 or less miss, 7 or more hit, 7 to 9 weak, 10 plus strong, right? That partial success system. The first basic move is act under fire. It's basically when you do something when you're in a high pressure situation. You're going to roll plus cool. That's it. Under fire is anything when you're under pressure. Yeah, that's act under fire.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But then there, like, so the core mechanic of all of this comes down to like the mixed success aspect of it. So on a 10 plus, you do it. On a 7 to 9, you flinch, hesitate, or stall. The MC can offer you a worse outcome, a hard bargain, or an ugly choice. On a miss, be prepared for the worst. So every move has the stat that you roll, and then it has what happens on a 10 plus, on a 7 to 9, and on a complete failure. Some of them have like
a list of things that you can get.
Pick 3, pick 2, pick 1. Yeah.
And I have seen that used in other ways that I liked, and moving on.
I like it. Here's the thing: is like I like that core right there is my favorite. It is mixed success, but the way I like PbtA is like World of Dungeons, because what I want, right, is you roll a stat, right? You got 7 to 9, so now you hit, but there's a complication, and I come up with a complication based on the narrative that's happening, and we move forward. Yeah, that's it. But you don't need a list of 10 ways in order to choose which stat you're going to roll, and I don't necessarily need a huge like list of the possible pick 2s, pick 1s, pick 3s. I like that, but I like that in the context of like there's a Powered by the Apocalypse written by somebody else section later where it's like casting a spell. And it's like, dope. Okay, here's what I want from a move is like when there is some type of like a power being used or a special being used, something that in that specific instance requires more. That's cool. What I hate are these basic moves where it's just like, okay, like I want to just do some shit. And it's like, okay, that sounds like you're doing it cool. So
Right.
roll cool and then see what happens. But like the list of basic moves funnels all narration into 10
It
plot
really
points.
does. It tells you exactly how to play this game. These are the boxes. These are the lines that you're coloring inside of.
It's too much structure for the basic moves of the game. For advanced moves, for peripheral moves, for other things like that, I don't mind.
It's
but
too
for
much structure for their apparent intent behind this.
Yeah.
And yet somehow still not enough structure when writing this down. Okay, so our next move is go aggro. When you go aggro on someone, you're going to roll plus hard. On the 10 plus, they have to choose one. Force your hand and suck it up. Cave and do what you want. On a 7 to 9, they can choose one of the above or one of the following. Get the hell out of your way. Barricade themselves securely in. Give you something they think you want, or tell you what you want to hear. And on minutes prepared for the worst. This is a weird one. The list is weird.
So I mean, but that the going aggro one is kind of the standard for the most part, like example of the rest of the moves, where it's like
right.
But it also is weird because it says on a 10 plus they have to choose one. So you go aggro on someone, they pick one of those things. Yeah.
Which weird.
You basically, the moves feel like scripts to me. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Where it's like I can't just do what I want because as soon as I trigger a move, it's all scripted out for me. Like, including the snowball thing. And you do this, which triggers this, which trigger this. It feels, you know what it feels like? It feels like a choose your own adventure book suddenly, as opposed to playing a game, you know, where it's just like, as soon as the move triggers, you're just along for the ride. And maybe you get to make a few choices, but eventually it rolls out the end. And it's like, to me, I think the trying to get rid of the paralysis of choice comes down to having no choice at all. Like, maybe you get to pick one or two things every now and then, but for the most part, as soon as the move is triggered, you're just following the script.
Yeah, this is very much on the other end of choice paralysis. The next move, sucker someone.
But sorry, real quick. Because under each move, right? So that by in and of itself, that's enough for me. I get it, right? Totally. So then, but underneath go aggro, there's literally 3/4 of a page talking about it. There's at least these examples are actually marked off as examples, which I'm fine with. It's actually marked as examples. It's not just conversation within the rules context. But then that's another like half a page. And then there's a huge paragraph on example of a mistake and a correction. So like, I don't necessarily mind this stuff as much, especially the examples and the other part of the examples. But so many of the rules are written mechanically where I'm like, okay, I get it. And then they give me 10 paragraphs with more contextual explanation. And it's like, that's been the problem the whole time, is there's too much contextual. I do this, but sometimes I do this. And sometimes you can do this instead. And instead of just giving me the rules and giving me the examples, you know, every page, every move takes like 2 pages, 3 pages.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. So sucker someone. Which, you know. Yeah. So the sucker someone, you know what, guys, we're gonna keep going. You're getting how this works. We're just gonna move through. Sucker someone is like when you attack someone who's unsuspecting or helpless. Perfect. In battle, let's see. When you're in battle, that's when you use the battle moves. You can seize by force, which you're gonna roll plus hard, and then you get to pick from a list of things again. After that, you have sorry, I'm laughing at our chat. Seduce or manipulate. It's when you seduce or manipulate someone, you're gonna roll plus hot for how hot you are. That's that one.
Well, so we can explain this one just a little bit more, because this one's an important core mechanic of the game. This is when the sex comes in.
This is when the sex comes in. So
yeah. So basically, when the whole point of sex in the game is not just like just banging, right? The whole section here talking about it is it's leverage, right? So, and that's the whole point, because the sex moves fall under seduce or manipulate, bluff, fast talk, whatever. So you really only use sex in the game when sex is leverage, where it's like, okay, you want that thing? Like, I'll fuck you if you give it to me. You know what I mean?
Just like real life.
Yeah, just like real life. So it's interesting the way that it works in here, and it specifically says over and over again that for like just go black, like you don't need to act all that stuff out. I mean, I guess if you really want to have that kind of game, you totally can. But like it's specifically about gaining leverage and using leverage, and also about creating history with people. So when you have sex with someone, your sex move comes in, and for the most part, that talks about whether you get history with someone and a move that you can do based on the history that you get, or affecting the history you get with someone, which affects your improvement. So the sex moves, if you use them, directly affect your improvement in the mechanics of the game. So yeah.
Where are we, dude?
I don't know. Yeah. I'll just run through the rest of the basic moves, because I think I was going to do these first anyway, so I've read these like really diligently. So read a sitch. When you read a charge situation, you roll plus sharp. Basically, that's just understanding what's going on. That's important for a lot of the things. When you read a person, it's exactly the same thing. It's you read a person.
Why are those two different moves?
Because it's a situation and a person. So one, so, but the thing is, like, you roll for sharp on both, but like what you get from the list of questions is totally different. So, like,
that is very true.
What's the best escape room? Who's vulnerable? Things like that is the situation. And reading a person is, are they telling the truth? How are they feeling? Like, what's going on? So again, each of these has a series of things underneath it. This is different though, because you can hold, right? Which is something we haven't really talked about yet.
Right.
So on a 10 plus, you hold 3, which means when you interact with someone, you get a 1-for-1. So basically, you don't immediately have to use those holds, but you can use them as the situation plays out. So if I'm reading you and I roll plus sharp, on a 10 plus, I hold 3. So as our interaction plays out, you can say something to me and I can be like, okay, I'm using one of my holds, and the MC tells me, are they telling the truth? And then as the situation continues to play out, I can use another one of my holds to ask like what their intent is. So this move is different because of the holds, which is not something that's really explained well on like how the holds work and things like that.
It's not, and I would still argue that this is the read person and read sitch is just one move that has 2 different lists based on whether or not you're reading a pair. Like, I mean, it is, but like, it doesn't need to. Yeah.
I don't disagree. I think because they feel the need to have all the examples and stuff, which again I do like, but it's all the talk afterwards that makes it a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, you could, if you're just gonna have 2 different lists anyway, then it's okay to break it into 2 for me. But again, yeah, it is the exact same move.
Well,
it is the exact
same. And then
there's
a whole other section that says reading a sitch or a person,
which is, I think, like what?
Which I think, yeah.
You could then just have it in there, right? And then open your brain to the world's psychic maelstrom. Again, I wish that came up a little bit more, but it really talks about giving good detail to the impressions of things that are happening. There's not really a list of things underneath the open their brain section. It's just a lot of explanation and examples about open your brain to the psychic maelstrom. There's help or interfere, which is really weird and kind of weirdly explained, because
it is weird, but it's when history really comes in and is usable. And it's interesting that you can like help your buddies out, or you can be like, nah, I'm gonna fuck them over. You know, you can give them negatives. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, this one's interesting, but it has a little bit of like a retconny aspect to it. So it says, helping or interfering, you roll history, like you just said. On a 10 plus, they take +2 help or -2 interference to their roll. On a 7 and 9, it's 1 or less. But like the example of play literally says, like, my PC is trying to shoot your PC. Your PC runs behind a barrel, right? And like the response is, well, I wouldn't let you just do that. So it's not like you can have a move, stop a move, because there's not really opposed rules in it. So what you would do instead is, I go to shoot you. You respond by running behind a barrel. I respond by rolling interference to make your run behind the barrel move, like act under fire. have negative points to it, so that my move then comes back into having a more likelihood to hit you. So it's kind of like that snowball thing. So you have to like do a thing to do a thing to do a thing to go back to the first thing to see how well it works. I don't mind that. It sounds like it's a thing that I wouldn't like, but I don't mind that because I think that's a much better way to do it than like, or it is an alternate way to do opposed rolls that I don't mind, to just be like, you do a thing, so I do a thing, but I make it a little harder for you, so then my thing works a little bit better. I don't mind that one. And I do like when the history actually comes into play. Mutual interference, that's what I was basically just talking about. Lifestyle, I don't understand why this is a move. Like at the beginning of a session, spend 1 or 2 barter for your lifestyle. Why is that a move? Just like be it everything's
a move.
Everything is a move. Working gigs, that's a thing. Need jingle during a session is a move, and it's just like, okay, then literally just say you can work gigs. That's apparently a move. The session in move is a move. This is what I'm talking about. It gets to a point where like moves don't mean anything. The word move has lost all definition in my brain.
It's like, because I several times have thought about the session end move while we're doing this, and we've so much else going through this that I've forgotten about it, and then we got to it and I'm like, oh yeah, we're ending the session to move.
That's what I'm saying. Like by making everything a move, you make moves meaningless. Like and especially again, this feeds back into the idea of like, I feel boxed in by too much structure of the basic moves, and then the response is always, well, not everything is a move, and it's like, but everything in the fucking book is a goddamn move. Like the way it's written, you can't do anything without it being a move, even though like in one tiny sentence it says if it's not a move, don't do, like only things you do that trigger moves. And it's just like, well, when everything's a move, everything is a move. So the end of the section is important. So it says choose a character who knows you better than they used to. If there's more than one, choose one at your whim. Okay, tell that player to add +1 to their history with you on their sheet. If this brings them to history +4, they reset to history +1. And therefore mark experience, because don't forget, when you mark 5 experience, you get to improve. If no one knows you better, choose a character who doesn't know you as well as they thought, or choose any character you whim. Tell that player to take -1 to their history with you on their sheet. If this brings them to history -3, they reset to 0 and mark an experience. So if you know someone really well or not well at all, you still get to mark experience. If you forget to do this at the end of the session, do it at the beginning of the session. That is the end move. Again, I don't understand why it can't just be like a mechanic of the game, but the mechanic of the game is that everything is a move. So there you go. And there's an example for that, which is fine. And then that is the list of basic moves.
Hey, and you know what? We're halfway through the book.
Yeah.
Peripheral moves, which are other moves. These are basic moves that come into play less commonly, or optionally, or that might not come into play at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
harm and healing moves, but then there's a whole harm and healing section.
Yeah. So harm and healing. You roll harm when you suffer harm, and it's a list of things you can choose.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of examples.
Yeah.
And then after that is barter moves, which is optional because maybe your world doesn't have bartering because it's too apocalyptic or whatever. And it's interesting, I guess. And then there's insight, which you probably won't have by default, but if you have a hocus follower, that they might grant it. And then you have augury, which is another thing that you probably won't have, but the hocus follower might give it to you.
So again, why aren't all of these moves up into the character section, and then you can just put the moves that are specific to hocus underneath the hocus section? Like,
I don't know. Actually, the first time I read through this, I was like, wait, are all these just hocus moves? Like
half of them are, yeah. Oh wait, then we get to chain highlighted stats again.
Weird
for like the 5th time.
Here.
Yes. A peripheral move, like beginning of any session move. Like, I just don't understand. This is the part where
what's so funny is that, like, because this is here, that means that changing highlighted stats is a move.
It is, because everything is a move. Don't forget page 163, because I'm going to reference page 163 later. Let me write that down.
Oh, wait, why?
Oh, you'll see.
Okay, cool.
Oh, and that's all the peripheral moves, right?
Yeah, and then we get to battle moves, which are all
important and should be not on page 166.
Yeah, so exchanging harm, which is hurting things.
But this is a move, but it's also like literally a core mechanic of the game.
Right.
Inflicting harm and suffering harm. This is what I want to see. Harm equal weapons minus armor. That's a rule. That's a mechanic. That is a thing that should be important in the game before page 160 fucking 6. Like
Yeah. You listen, you inflict harm equal to the harm rating of your weapon minus the armor rating of your enemy. You suffer harm equal to the harm rating of your enemy's weapon minus the armor rating of your own armor. Easy. It's the most actually rule that in this whole thing. It's like right at the top, it just says, hey, by the way, it's just harm equals weapon minus armor. And you're like, oh, amazing.
Yep. A short, brief example for how it works, and then boom, you're good.
Yeah, it's weird, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not a straight like attack move, right?
No, not really, because, and this is another thing, when we get to Seize by Force, which is the next thing, there's a lot of explanation where it says like the default battle move is Seize by Force, and I'm like, I don't understand how that's the default. Like, I just want to punch you in the fucking face. But it's always like, well, you're probably always fighting for something, so try to Seize by Force. I'm like, I just don't understand how, like, maybe in the apocalypse world where, like, you're really only ever, like, vying for stuff or something, or,
right,
like, a person or things, maybe that's kind of, like, the default. I just don't understand how, like, inflict harm isn't, like, the default move, because, but it also says Seize by Force, and then you get to the variations, which is assault a secure position, keep hold of something you have, fight your way free, defend someone else from attack. How are those Seize by Force? How
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, you fight your way free, Seize by Force, so you're seizing your freedom by force. This is one of the ones where I'm like, this one feels shoehorned.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I have Broken Worlds open at the same time because it's not like Patchwork Worlds. Like, it is actually very powered by the apocalypse. Like, it has moves and everything. It's still in that very linear fashion, and they have a default attack move, which is just called Reach Heaven Through Violence. Which is like, when you're attempting to strike down a foe, this is what you do. You hit whenever you're trying to. Yeah.
But Seize by Force, under Seize by Force, you get to pick one of these options, and it is like you inflict harm, or you suffer less harm, or you take definite and undeniable control, or you impress, dismay, or frighten your enemy. Only one of those things, literally one of those things, of the 4 listed, has anything to do with actually taking control of anything.
Yeah, what a weird thing to call that. I mean, there's so many fucking moves. Like, why not just create one more and just be like, take down enemy, or whatever.
Or don't call this Seize by Force. Call it attacking someone, and then
aggressive action.
Aggressive action, and then one of the 4 things underneath it could be see something by force. Because only one of, like, it's just, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I do really enjoy this game, and it's so frustrating to me that the book is so unenjoyable to read.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Variations. There's a PC versus PC again. There's single combat, which to do which is like a duel.
Yeah, I do like this one. I do like this one.
Yeah. You're gonna roll plus hard. Go ahead, Ryan.
No. Yeah, go on.
Okay, you're gonna roll plus hard. You're exchanging harm. But first roll plus hard. On 10 plus both. On a 7 to 9, choose one. And on a miss, your opponent chooses one against you. So it's either inflict harm or suffer little harm. It's either you take a harm or give a harm. But it's interesting because on 10 plus, both happen. Which I'm like, oh, okay. I
dig that because you can, like, I roll, you roll, I roll, you roll, and like I can, like, any of those things are interesting ways to do it. This is like one of my favorite like moves in the whole game. It's like so simple and straightforward, and it really makes sense picking one or the other and having it be such a small list. Like, I like that to me is the basic like attack move.
Yes. Yeah, it kind of way more is actually, Yeah.
Like, I just want to punch you in the fucking face. Like, I just want to shoot you because you're pissing me off. Like, it's apocalypse world. Like, I don't always have to have a reason to do my shit,
Oh, Ryan, I was in a bad mood before our show started, but going through this with you has been very enjoyable.
My blood pressure is at like 180 right now.
Yeah. So some more combat moves. Yeah, you have lay down fire, which is kind of like a cover fire, support fire move, which is cool. You're gonna roll plus hard. You have an Overwatch move, where you were standing in Overwatch and you roll plus cool for that one. And then like on 10 plus, you choose one. Yeah. Keep an eye out. You're looking out for what's coming. Everything's a move, man. I mean, there's so many like, oh, hey, I want to look out for potential enemies. Oh, well, that's a keep an eye out move. So, better roll for that. Then you have subterfuge moves. Yeah, you can bait a trap. You can hunt prey. Escape a hunter. You can do PC cat versus PC mouse. You can turn the tables on somebody. And then you got road war moves, Ryan. Just in case there weren't enough moves yet. There's boarding a vehicle. There's outdistancing another vehicle. There's overtaking another vehicle. Dealing with bad terrain, which is a move. Shouldering another vehicle. Shoulder another vehicle. And then there's like V harm, which is like harm to like the vehicle's like massive frame. And the car's handling. Yeah. And those are all things. But don't worry, Ryan. I know you were worried that we were done with moves, but we're not, because next we have character moves. And these are all going to be character specific moves that we're not going to go through because we just really don't need to.
No, they're all listed. Yeah, they're all listed on the sheet.
Yes, absolutely. They're all on the play sheet. They're also all here. And that's where you're on 182 is where it starts, right? For that section.
Yeah.
I'm just looking real quick. Yeah, and it ends on 200. So there you go.
20 more pages explaining the things that are already listed.
Yeah.
All right, harm and healing. Let's get through this. So this is like the 5th time we've seen harm and healing. So let's talk about harm and healing some more. How might a character suffer harm? When the roll fucking says it does, because everything is a roll. Like I don't like that's, but it's bullet points of examples. How much harm? It's always weapon harm. Like minus your armor. That's listed as one of the actual only things that's actually corely listed. And then it goes into another example, but not listed as example, just within the text. And that's how that happens. So it has a list of the type of harm that you can do from 0 to 5. So like grappling and dragging and stuff like that is 0 harm. 1 is like a fist or a punch. 2 is a guy with a hammer. 3 is a guy with a shotgun. 4 is a grenade. 5 is like a big explosion, because at 5 you're basically dead. When a PC suffers harm, things happen. So getting shot with, harm equals the inflictor's weapon harm minus the sufferer's armor. If the weapon has armor piercing, ignore the armor. So it really comes down, it breaks down a lot of this into like an extremely easy mechanic of just it's harm, it's weapon harm minus armor. And then that's what you get. And then it talks a lot about like all the different segments of the clock, which, I mean, we'll get to more clock stuff at some point, I think. There are harm moves. When you suffer harm, suffering harm is a move. So this is different. This is different, right? Than actually like doing harm to someone from another move. Right. So it's a move that triggers the move. So if we're in single combat and I do harm to you, we can roll a suffer harm move. I actually don't mind this one a little bit, because it really comes down to adding more unpredictability and stuff to like the harm that's actually suffered to you. So this
I the list of stuff and like
much.
how it can narratively interact, but like I feel like the execution leaves a lot to be desired, and I feel like maybe not suffer harm like every time. I don't know. There's something here for sure.
Yeah. You don't have to do it every time. I guess as a GM, as an MC, You can do it, but this is the interesting thing when you read it. It says, when you suffer harm, roll plus harm suffered after armor if you're wearing any. On a 10 plus, the MC chooses one. You're out of the auction. It's worse than it seemed. You choose 2 on 7 to 9, which is a different list. You lose your footing. You lose grip on whatever you're holding. On a miss, the MC can nevertheless choose something from 7 to 9 anyway. If she does, though, it's instead some of the harm you're suffering, so take -1 harm. So, like, here's a list of stuff you can do on 7 to 9, but then you can just do stuff anyway if you want.
Sure.
So it basically just adds like a little bit of a wrinkle to what's going on. But you know what I would do with this is just like tie it into any harm. Like, you don't have to roll again to do it. Like, if you got hit with harm on a roll that was between 7 and 9, you can just pick 2 from the 7 to 9 list.
Yeah,
if you got hit with harm that's a 10 plus,
I like
just
that.
pick from the 10 plus list. Like, just put them together. Why are you rolling a second time?
Yeah, that I like a lot more. Yeah, it's like, dude, we can eliminate some of these roles, especially because like so many moves lead to other moves that just lead to other moves. Like, it's
well,
there's a section.
We went through the whole snowballing move section, and like the snowball, it's like 10 things down, and I'm like, you could just eliminate some of those. Like, you could just not. And if it does take that many, that's fine, cool, whatever. But like, I don't know, that there's ways that this can be parsed down simpler. When life becomes untenable is the section. When the character's countdown hits 12 midnight, her life becomes untenable. So you can choose options, and these are on the character sheet, but like how they come back, and that's the player's choice on what they want to do. So like when you hit basically you're dying, you can either come back with -1 hard, so you lose some stat. You can come back with +1 weird to a max of 3. So because if you basically close to death, you get weird. Or you can change to a new playbook, right? Or just die. And then you can just choose to die and just do something different. So here's the thing about this is like, it says when life becomes untenable, these things happen. This isn't a move. Crazy that it's not a move. Maybe it's supposed to be listed as a move, but like, this is just an explanation of a mechanic of the game. Crazy that you can explain a mechanic of the game without it being a move.
Sorry, Ryan. Everything's a move. So
yeah, you're right. Everything is a move. It's crazy. When an NPC attacks, they inflict harm. When an NPC suffers harm, guess what? They do harm to them. This is an explanation of the NPC clock for the countdown clock. So basically, I don't know if we missed the PC countdown clock section earlier, but basically it's split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 segments, right? So, but if you actually look at a real clock, it's from 12 to 3. So a quarter of it is your first segment. 3 to 6 is a segment, and 6 to 9 is a segment. So 3/4 of the clock is 1 segment each. And then from 9 to 12, it's broken into 1, 2, 3 segments, right? And anything prior to 6 p.m. for a PC, so the first 2 segments basically just heal with time. Like, get enough rest, that'll go away. So it's kind of like just your default 1-2 hit. That's fine. Anything after 6, like from 6 to 9, requires some type of healing, and really anything after 9 like requires healing, and you're kind of fucked. Yeah, and it gets worse with time. So that's kind of how it works for the PCs. But for NPCs, really, they die potentially by the second segment, so from 3 to 6, and definitely by the third segment from 6 to 9. So if they have no armor and you hit them with something that does 3 harm, they're just dead. But a PC could take up to like 5 harm and theoretically not really be dead. I like that once it hits like the 5th segment, they're basically, or even the 4th segment, they're dead and you're just fucking up their body. And like the 5th segment is just bodily destruction. So like if you do 6 harm to an NPC with no, you basically blow their body to bits. So that's NPC
which
suffering
sex
harm.
move is that?
That would be probably the Battle Babe sex move, I think. It's just the orgasm to oblivion. Yeah, and what I just said is explained here a little bit more. Using a gang as a weapon, and the size of the gang matters. So it's just the way that using gang content.
Size always matters.
Yep, of course, especially in this game, it's a sex move. So this one's a little bit different because the way the gang suffers harm is really just like how many of the gang die and how many are surviving. And that's broken down into the 1 through 5 harm. Does the gang hold together? It's kind of like a morale thing. Using a vehicle as a weapon is listed here, which is fine. And it talks about the vehicles like clock. This is kind of a little bit of like NPC stat block harm kind of damage. Vehicle harm is listed here. When a building suffers harm is listed. Other kinds of harm. Psi harm. The symbol right here is psi in the Greek alphabet. So this is psychic harm. When you suffer psychic harm, there's a list of things that can happen, but a lot of them are very similar to just when you suffer any kind of harm, you're out of the action. Like, you know, you lose track of something. It's pretty much the same. It's just psi harm. But then we get into things like S harm and D harm. Hey, do me a favor, roll hard for D harm. Like, I don't understand the reason for this. Like, S harm means stun, D harm means deprivation. Just say harm that stuns them, harm that deprives them. Like, D harm arid, D harm warmth, D harm cool is heat stroke, hypothermia, asphyxiation. I just think that suddenly there's this weird influx of letters 219 pages in, you know? And then we get to...
It is interesting how it really clicks on suddenly here. It's like...
And if this is that important, again, harm and healing should be way earlier in the book. It's the realistically kind of, again, a core thing is just if you've taken harm and if you're alive, you know. It's
funny how like the arc of my caring about this has really where we are in this book. It's like, man, at this point I'm like, God, I don't care about these rules at all, man.
No. And what's crazy is we're 2 hours and 20 minutes in and we haven't read 80% of the words.
I know.
Yeah. So yeah, healing by an angel. It talks about the angel's kit and everything. To use it to stabilize and heal someone at 9 or past, you have to roll plus stock because it's the stock you have in your kit that you can use to heal people. And then based on what you roll, you get to choose like 1 or 2 different things. I do think this is really interesting. So the list is like they fight you and you have to narco stab them. How long will they be out? I like that. The
cool.
Pain and drugs make them babble the truth to you. Ask them what secret they spill. This is what I feel like moves should all be like, right? And like things that are just basic mechanics should just be
absolutely.
basic mechanics. Yeah, but things that are like moves should be this kind of narrative thing. But again, a basic mechanic should just be explained as a basic mechanic. Like harm to me is just, you just roll a stat and do fucking harm. That's a basic mechanic of the game. It doesn't have to be a move. Move to me is this exact thing. Choose a thing like they respond well to treatment, recover 1 stock. They're at your complete mercy. What do you do to them? It's creating these narrative things going forward.
It's open-ended.
Yeah, it's not just like A happens, so B happens. Again, I didn't make PbtA. This is the game that started it. I just think it's one of the worst PbtAs I've ever read. If there's no angel, no healing, you're shit out of luck. That's what it says. There's a particular NPC medic. They can do it. There's an NPC medic. She's who cares? Like whatever. Gear and crap. Okay, you can barter. That's the thing that you can do if you want to. There's a move for it. Descriptive tags. I'm not a huge fan of tags. I think people enjoy them. I feel like it provides too much structure, or maybe it's just even just like I don't like the way they're written. I don't even really like the word tag. But
here's my thing: is I like tags, and there are too many in this.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
There's just too many. Like,
yeah. I don't understand how I'm supposed to know. Like, I know we're supposed to use reference sheets, but here's the thing. Once again, if I'm playing a game that I have to stare down at to read a script from, to like look to see the 10 moves that I have with my 6 stats and my 20 tags, when am I playing the game?
It sure seems like everyone needs their own like GM screen for this, you know?
I want a whole my player book is 4 pages long.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, you could just, every single player character has their own GM screen of just like, here's the stats, here's what I can do, here what tags means, you know?
Here's my basic moves, but here's my character specific moves, but here's my special and peripheral moves. Yeah. It's just, so anyway, so the way tags work, I don't mind this. I feel like this is more mechanical, which finally, thank God, writing a tag is not a move, except that everything is a move. So basically it says, this is the way that tags work. There's 3 categories, right? So in the listings that follow, you have plus, parentheses, tag, like valuable, infinite, or whatever. It means you simply, no. Let me get to it. So first, the plain mechanical. Second, constraints on when the characters can use them. And third, cues recommending something for you to say about them. So let's just look at an example and we'll say that. So, and then we'll come back to some of this other stuff that just drives me up the goddamn wall. So for example, if you look at a big knife, let's say a revolver, right? It's 2 harm. So harm is listed first. Then you have close, reload, and loud. Those are the 3 tags. And in the order of the way that you can understand what those tags mean, this is something that I think is kind of like you get pretty quickly. This is one of the ones where I'm like, okay, I get it. So the first is mechanical. So close is a mechanical thing. You can only use it when you're close. The second is reload. It's a constraint on what the character can do, which means it requires you to reload it. And the third is the cue, which recommends something about what you say about it or how it goes. And it's loud. So mechanical, the constraint, and the cue pretty much narratively on how it works. So again, you get close, reload, loud. I don't mind that. I'm okay with that. I like that it's got a little bit of mechanical structure to it. Yeah. But here's my not favorite part is all of the fucking tags that go with it. Like range tags, in armor, plus in armor, in minus armor, plus in armor, plus bonus, plus in choice, alive, AP, AV, applied, area, autofire, braced, close, close far, in placed, far, hand, high tech, implanted, infinite, intimate, loud, messy, refill, reload, remote, S-arm, slow, tag, valuable, worn, implanted. It's 3 pages of tags. And I know they're not always going to be applicable, but like I just feel like a lot of that can just be constrained down and then just given a little bit of context to separate them a little bit. You know what I mean?
I even think like getting rid of like a list of tags and making them more open-ended things like, hey, each weapon's going to have these tags like you in the order you said. Here are like 4 examples of each what we normally would put with these weapons, but your table can decide like its own tags for its own weapon and what that means, right? Like
yeah. But here's the other thing too, right? So this whole book is, again, contextual examples, but when you actually need examples, it's not explained at all.
Yeah.
Like at all. So for example, there are like 50 fucking tags we just went over, right? And then you get to a section of weapons and armor that talks about common firearms and other common weapons. And there's an entirety of maybe like 5 of those 50 tags. There's no explanation of like a more complex tag. You know what I mean? There's not like anything that talks to me about, there's like one that uses infinite, but there's nothing that's like, give me something that's like reload, remote, slow. You know, there's none of like, well, reload. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like it basically, everything comes down to harm, a distance, and if it's loud or quiet. And that's pretty much it. Armor, it exists. Fashion armor, it gives you 1. 2 armor is more serious. And 3 armor is basically a fucking bomb suit. That's it. There you go. That's armor. And guess what? It reduces incoming damage. There you go. It gives you a whole way to do custom firearms and how to build them, which guess what? This is all on the playbook sheets. I don't understand that that's another thing that's on the playbook sheet, like for every character, is like how to build a custom firearm. It seems like a weird optional thing. There's specialty gear, which is like kits. And so then guess what we do for all the specialty gear? Is yep, that's right. We list them for every individual character instead of just being in a character section. Not everyone has one, right? You got Angel gear, Brainer gear, Lux gear, bikes, cars, things we've gone over a bunch of times already, battle vehicles.
Listen, I can tell you right now, I think this game's getting a high score.
a whole section on prosthetics here. Different than the prosthetic section we went over earlier, but exactly the same. It literally, I'm pretty sure they just copy pasted it. Workspaces, whatever. I'm not even worried about it. Gangs, descriptive tags for gangs and how they work. Oh, that's not in the gang section earlier when we talked about gangs.
Oh, that's not in the gang section earlier. Nope. That's so weird. Why?
Using gang as a weapon? I don't know, because it's under a healing and harm section earlier, but we're talking about gangs again completely separate. This is what I'm talking about. There is no thing where I can go to and say, okay, how do gangs work? Go to the gang section. I have to go to 4 or 5 different sections to get the contextual understanding of the entirety of how gangs work. This is what I'm talking about. Like it makes my brain hurt so bad. Creating a gang is a threat. Maybe in the threat section when we talked about gangs, it's in there. It's not. Surplus and 1, I don't know. Followers, holdings, and establishments, they exist. Hard holders holding their wealth and all the things that can come from that. Cool. It's down here in gear and crap, which is fine. It could also be in the hard holders section. This one is like 6, 7, 8 fucking pages long for establishing that and all the things you can get from it. That's fine. Whatever. Improvement. Last really important part of the game. Prescriptive and descriptive, right? So prescriptive, it changes the character sheet, meaning it changes the character's fictional circumstances and capabilities, right? That's the game's experience and improvement rules, right? Descriptive, when the character's fictional circumstances or capabilities change naturally within the character's fictional world, the player can and should change your character sheet to match. I love this section. This is a great fucking section. This is really interesting. I really enjoy it. The examples here are actually really good. So For example, it says Bran bolts a machine gun to his Jeep. I tell his players its stats. You actually have changed the game and changed mechanically and narratively the game.
Right.
The holding takes in refugees, and some of them naturally gravitate to Keeler's gang, doubling its size. I tell Keeler's player to change the gang from small to medium. Narrative and mechanical, prescriptive and descriptive. I like that. It's a mechanic. It's not a move. Fair's fair though. Keeler hits her fuck this shit roll with a 7 and 9, and I tell her she can ditch out, but she'll have to leave her new bike behind. She's easy come, easy go. I really like that. Like, there's goods and bads with like the decision that you make and with your improvement and things like that, so that you can change a lot of the things that are affecting your players. Your hard hold, or if you decide to just leave your hold, that's a huge thing, right? Experience. So a player marks experience when she rolls a highlighted stat, her history when someone resets, or a move tells her to, which we've talked about numerous times already. I'm okay with it being here, but this is the only place it should be. Not going over that. Changing highlighted stats. Remember when I talked to you about what was that page number?
160 something?
163. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see this section changing a highlighted stats? At the beginning of any session, it starts. The last line is, "Gee, what a pal." All right. Let's go to page 163.
Is it the exact same thing?
At the beginning of any session, gee, what a pal. It's literally copy pasted 3/4 of a page from one section to another section.
That's actually crazy. Like, at least with the other stuff that's duplicated, you're like, okay, it's slightly different. I guess that's not good, but it's the same. It's so
explained
weird.
in a different way, at least, or addresses it slightly. You don't need to address it 4 times, but it's literally just copy pasted 3/4 of a page from one section to another section.
That's so weird, dude. What?
Yes. Just say you can find it here on page 163. If you're talking about that, just say you can find it here. There's already so many indexes and hyperlinks, inline hyperlinks to other sections and things like that. Why have literally the same words filling 3/4 of a page on 2 separate pages? Like, that is the epitome of what drives me nuts about this book. Character improvement. You fill 5 circles, you improve. The improvements are listed on each player's character sheet. You get more stuff that happens. Retiring a character is fun and interesting, though. I do really like this whole section. So basically, retiring a character means put them in safety for multiple reasons, as in, like, they can still remain an NPC in the world. And basically, like, if you get to a point where you can retire a character, they are in safety, which means that they're not just going to be killed off for a story beat by the MC. And the MC is not going to suddenly turn them evil or do some like random shit with them just because it's fun or interesting. Like, the character is safe. You can retire the character safely knowing that this person you've invested all this time and effort into is going to live in the world with what they were doing, and that's fine. I like that reassurance within the system to just be like, okay, you retired the character, suddenly it's mine, so I'm just going to murder him? No, because I would have just kept them, and I could change the consequences of it. So if you really get to a point where you retire a character, they can just live in the world, they can even be an NPC you go back to, and they're just going to be left alone. And I like that.
Also, just throwing this out there, if you're playing a game and you're in a different game and you want to retire a character and your game master is like, yeah, I fucking killed them, or now they're the bad guy without talking to you about it, your game master's a dick.
Yeah, play a different game master.
Yeah, you play with a different person, man. That guy's an asshole.
The best way to deal with problem players and GMs you don't like is don't play with them anymore. I hate these.
I mean, hey, that's been my method. So
here's an essay on how to deal with problem players. Don't. End of essay. All right, playing 2 characters. I don't mind this. Basically, that's one of the options that you can do. When you hit your max, you can play as 2 characters, and it says why not. MCs play with like 30. If the player character wants 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, go for it. They choose new they choose new histories, they do all of that. You can change your character type, which is another thing I really like. So basically, for example, the player keeps her old character book for reference and transfers her character into the new playbook. So you keep everything intrinsic to yourself, which is your stats, your moves, everything, your improvements, all of the things. You leave behind everything belonging to your old life. So for example, if a hard holder becomes a driver, she leaves everything that has to do with her holding behind, and then you get everything belonging to your new life. So if you do become a driver, you get a car. So I really, really love that, where you can just be like, okay, I've improved to the point, but I want to do something totally different. I'm going to suddenly become an angel. So I've learned how to become a medic. I leave my Maestro D sex club behind, and I become an angel because I want to go help people. I want to heal all the syphilis that I spread, you know? That I really like that as a mechanic. I like that. Advancing moves. Is the thing make me done? Yeah. 6 of the moves that you do. This is interesting. It's interesting. I don't know how I feel about this one. Of all the things that I like and dislike, I don't know how I feel about this one. One of the things you can do is advance 3 moves as a move when you hit your max improvement, right? Or when you get to the 5 or whatever. There's 6 total you can do, so you can do that move twice. You can choose 3, then you can choose the other 3. So 6 out of the 10 can be advanced. And basically what that means is 12 plus, basically you can crit on 12 plus now. So it's the same thing. So for example, doing something under fire works all the same way it did, but now on a 12 plus, you transcend the danger, the pressure, the possibility of harm. You do what you set out to do, and the MC will offer you a better outcome, true beauty, or a moment of grace. So basically, once you reach max improvement, you can choose a move where you give crits to 3 moves, and then you can choose that again to give crits to 3 other moves for a total of 6 of the 10 moves you can now crit on, and it basically makes everything great and golden for you. That's interesting. Like that. I like that. I do like that. You know what I like about this section more than anything is it's all mechanics.
Yeah.
Explained as if they are mechanics. Notice how concise these are. Bolds, italic explanations, a quick example, and then moving on to the next thing. This is one of my favorite sections in the game, is the improvement section, because it really just tells me what I need to do and how to do it. And advanced fuckery. You know what? I don't even care. It's just other moves. It's just random other moves. It's just a bunch of random other moves. That's what it comes down to. There's different character types that you can make. There's love letters that can be written. These are all just like random ass moves. That's what it comes down to. Powered by the Apocalypse, there's a whole section here of other people's moves for other games brought into this. So Ben Ray used Apocalypse World in a zombie game, so here's a move that they use. So these are examples of non-Apocalypse World moves for moves. And I like so much of these better than moves in the game, because most of them are special moves or powers or things like that versus the basic moves of the game. And I've said this over and over again. I hate the basic moves. I like special moves or powers or things like that. A good example of one is literally like there's one that's literally like cast a spell, right? Magic use, cast a spell, Tony Dowler, right? Apocalypse world based dungeon crawler. Magic user, cast a spell, use your intelligence. Arcane magic comes from the use of formula, ritual, or the magic user's own life force. Roll. On a 7 to 9, choose 1. On a 10, choose 2. The spell is not forgotten. The spell has a powerful effect, so you maximize your dice. The spell has a large effect, so double your range, duration, or number affected. And the spell does not misfire. Those are your options. That is using it as a power, as something that directly affects the situation that you're currently in, with clear narrative, like and things outside of the things. Again, it's not just like I want to do like a basic thing. I would run behind a wall or whatever, so I have to have all of these things. It's just so many of these, in my opinion, are used better in the game that they're talking about. It talks about the moves architecture. So we're 281 pages in, and it is now telling us how a move is put together. Okay. You see why I'm frustrated, people here? Here's a quick look at the structure of an Apocalypse World move. I don't understand why after basic moves, it doesn't go directly into moves. And this isn't the first part of the move section where it tells you the structure of how, the mechanic of how a move actually works and how they're built. It says you do stuff and then you do some other stuff. I mean, the all moves take the form of when blank, then blank. Why is that not one of the very first things written in the entire book? The whole thing, everything is a move. So let me tell you how moves work on one of the last pages of the game. So for example, when the character acts, then roll, right? When circumstances dictate, right? Then activate something's tag. This would have been really helpful forever ago. And and this is under the advanced section. Advanced of all sections. Why isn't this under the MC section?
I know, that's what I was thinking. Like, why would it be here and not? I mean, there's like so much of this book. I'm like, why isn't this in the MC section? Also, why isn't the MC section in the back of the book? Right before. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway.
Ludography. I like this. This is a great thing that Vincent Baker does. I think with a lot of their stuff, it really talks about like everything involved with the situation. The playtesters. Again, if you notice, Adam Coble is like the first one on here. He literally is one of the dudes that wrote friggin' Dungeon World, which is one of the first ones. John Harper is listed in here. Right there. So like a lot of the people that originally came up with like the first batch of PbtAs after this were involved in this to start with. Game influences, there's and I do really like where it specifically says like history is based on The Mountain Witch by Timothy Kleiner. Stakes is based on 𝗔𝗪𝗪 from Ron Edwards. I really like that, because you know what that makes me want to do is go read all of these games. Like, I want to go read Primetime Adventures and Shadows of Yesterday and Sorcerer's Soul, Extreme Street Luge.
Listen, the character sex moves were inspired by sex and sorcery.
Yep, I want to go read. I want to go read some sexy other stuff. So I really do like that. Media influences, like et cetera, et cetera. They're literally sex ed things to go read. Books, Changing Bodies, Changing Lives, Ruth Bell, 1998. That's interesting. There's the countdown clock, which basically says like, you know, it's in the 80s. We all knew about the countdown clock. We all know about that. Gasoline, that's the section I was talking about. All of that. And that's the end. The indexes. So I like this. This is great in PDF form. It's not going to be super helpful in, I guess, in book form, except if you're flipping. But like every single move that's listed here, even character moves and everything, is indexed and hyperlinked. So thank goodness there's at least that in the PDF. All of them are hyperlinked.
Thank goodness there's that.
There's character moves by stat are listed by stat and then hyperlinked. That's great. That's very necessary.
Really cool.
Yeah. The no stat character moves listed and hyperlinked, which I really like. The topical index, which is basically just a repeat of the table of contents, but it's all listed specifically and hyperlinked, which is really great. The one thing that, again, I was hoping for and didn't see when I got to the end of this, because now we're just at the end, is just like a 2-page breakdown of just like how the game works.
No.
Like at no point is there any breakdown of like, this is what a roll does. If you hold, this is a hold. If you go forward, this is go forward. If you if you
never touched back on that, except that one little section where it's in the middle of something else.
If you get harm, then this is how harm works. If you get healing, this is how healing works. You could do all of that in maybe a 2-page spread. It's just a breakdown of the core. This is a run through for the players on how it works, but it's not here. It's not here. And that's it. So we're going to get into the review scores. So, 5 metrics for those that don't know. We give 10 points, up to 10 points for each. Art and layout is the art and the layout. Usability is how usable the book is. Rule set is the rule set, and if we like it, and if it's whatever. Originality is how original it is. Value is bang for your buck, and total score of up to 50. Art and layout. There is no art.
There's no art.
The cover's great. There's maybe like 5 other pieces. So really, and the pieces are fine. They're basic. It's whatever, but it's fine. I think much more art and much less words would have made this a much better book. The layout is fine. I mean, it's readable the whole way through. I think the lack of that's in usability or whatever. So just visually, the layout is adequate at best. The art is adequate at best. I don't really have anything good or bad to say about it. So
I think this is a great example of a 5.
It's a perfect example. That's exactly what I was going to say. Again, I have nothing good or bad to say about it. So it's bang average, score of a 5. Usability. Okay, here's where my brain breaks.
Yeah, this is a hard one. Like, so you want to go first?
Oh, it doesn't matter. We'll probably
so it's hyperlinked to hell. There's an index that's incredibly usable. There are bookmarks everywhere, but there is, if you want to look up a rule, it's probably in 3 or 4 different areas, and each one gives different context to that rule.
Yep. I mean, and it is listed in the real book, so you can flip back and forth and back and forth and back and forth if you want. But again, when you go to the indexes and you actually look up, like if you look up harm, For a himplay, actually, let's just go back, and this will give a perfect example of what I'm talking about. If you go to page 304 and you look at harm,
304, and you look at harm. Okay.
Oh,
wow.
I'm all the way at the beginning. Okay. So, for example, if you want to know all about harm, right, you look at page 12 through 13, page 158 through 60, page 166 to 179, and page 202 through 219.
It's interesting in putting together this index that they didn't go, hey, do you think that that's weird that it's so many different places?
Yeah, look at highlighted stats. Highlighting stats is such a basic, it's such an easy mechanic. You literally just like, someone else picks one for you, MC picks one for you. So why is it on page 12, 13, 77 through 78, 163, 259, and 260? And then underneath it says changing highlighted stats, 163 and 260. Those are the 2 pages that are literally exactly the same, just like copy pasted.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's frustrating in that, like you just said, like the tools to navigate the book aspect of usability for the PDF, amazing. Like everything you need, one step below Troika, in the fact that like just about everything in here, every link, every reference to another page, everything is linked, indexes, navigation, like crazy. Actually reading the book and understanding everything is a bottom fucking basement for me.
And the order in which the book is set up as well
makes no sense.
I'm gonna say that this is, for me, is a 5.
Dude, you're being nice.
I'm being very nice.
I'm okay with this being a 4, dude.
Okay, I'm okay with this being a 4 as well. I think it's hard because the usability tools that we usually like really harp on are there, but the book itself is just a mess. And I mean, honestly, maybe it is a 4 really because also if you go look for that rule, it's a wall of like just conversational text. I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing, man?
That's what I'm saying. And again, in order to get all the context you need for how the rule works, you have to check on 3 different pages, like on 3 different sections.
I had to have a whole discussion with somebody. You know,
I thought about this one in my head probably more than any of the rest of them, where I'm just like, the tools to navigate this book are so good in the PDF really specifically. But actually using the book breaks my brain. Like, the rules of this book are maybe 4 pages, realistically broken down into just the core mechanics of it, and this is a 304-page book. It's just I first personally was like, a 5 sounds good for this, but my negative feelings so override my positive feelings for this that I just can't give it a positive score. I think like it hurts.
Yeah, I think that is valid.
Okay.
Rule set.
Now, rule set, and this is the actual rules of the game, not like all of like in my mind, I'm cutting off all the conversational text entirely. Okay. I'm literally just looking at the core mechanics of the rules and seeing how I feel. I'm more positive than negative on the rules. Again, a 2d6 mixed success is my favorite rule set. My favorite way to play games is based on, would not exist without this book. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, that has to come into it. I think the system at the time in 2010, I think if we read this in 2010 without reading any of the PbtAs we read before, would blow our goddamn minds. And I understand why it won awards.
I wouldn't even be able to understand it. So,
but you know what I mean? Like, in the context of this. But like, I can understand why it won awards, because when I did go back and look at like games that were out at the time, things that were going on. I read a lot of blogs about like what it is in response to. Again, I've talked to Aaron King, again, buy all their stuff, about the context of situations that were going on at the time, like moves. And I've read a bunch of Aaron's stuff about like the not just Patrick World. There's another book that's like all moves. So I think at the time when it came out, this was fucking groundbreaking, and it's hard to kind of parse that from what we know, because so many things that exist in the way that we play games now exist because of this.
Absolutely.
So at the time, it blew shit away. I think that I think I love a lot of it. Again, and I'll say this over and over again, I don't like the basic moves. I think that not everything has to be a move.
Everything is a move. That is the biggest issue. Listen, dice mechanic, great. The way stats work, also pretty good.
Good.
Like, too many moves.
Tags is fine. Moves. Yeah. Not everything is a goddamn move. Things are just moves. Some things are just mechanic. Why is session into move?
I don't
And
know.
again,
Also, there's just blurred lines with the moves as well. Like I don't know. I'm very unsure about some of them and where they cross over. I think that this is what do you think of this one?
like I said, it's hard. Like there are parts of it that I think are fucking genius and I love.
Yeah.
And there are parts of it that just break my fucking little brain in ways that I don't enjoy. It's just it's hard. This is a really difficult one.
It is obviously above average purely for the innovation of it. But not that far above it. Because I think it's just too bogged down with too many moves and too many tags and too much, and
because this is the problem that I have with the system in general, right? Is I have played and read a shitload of PbtAs, and I'll say this again, this is my least favorite PbtA I've ever read, and it is literally the progenitor of the entire system. How can I read a game based on this game that is better than this game and does the things this game wants to do in a better way? Or I don't even want to say better, because we have to then look at like contextually like what the creator meant when they were creating the game. Again, they didn't go out to write a system in Apocalypse World. Just the systems that have come since then, I think are people have explained them, especially in a better way. Like Aaron King explaining how PbtA works in Patchwork World explains, I know how to play this game better by reading a different game.
I actually definitely also know how to play it better because of Patchwork Worlds.
Yeah,
like
Babes in the Wood too, from Adam.
Broken World's the one that I have played previously, or I've ran a group through it before. I know how to play that one better after going to Patchwork World.
Monster of the Week is another great one. It is all of this half as big with the rules explained better. So but again, so this is rule set, which definitely comes into how the rules are told to you. But at the core of itself, I mean, I honestly have to at least give this a 7.
I'm okay with a 7 for this one.
Yeah, because again, it is a progenitor of everything, and even if I don't like the way the rules are communicated to me, I still really like the most of the rules. Yeah. Originality. I mean, like mechanically changed. Yeah. Like post PbtA is a thing. Like there is before PbtA and there's after PbtA in the context of gaming. Like it has to have an insanely high score because it innovated the way we play pretty much every single game.
Yeah, it really did. I mean,
at least some aspect of it. Tags, moves, like just there's the
tag moves,
tag moves. Yeah, sex.
Sex moves. Hey, dude, if it wasn't for this game, we wouldn't have sex moves in games.
But yeah, so like it's got to be really high score because it changed. It won awards for its innovation. You know what I mean? Like it innovated. TTRPGs now would be every single one written would be entirely different, because I'll tell you right now, even if you've never read a PbtA game, guess what? You probably have, and a game you've read has the creator has read a PbtA game. So for me, originality has to be.
Even if you're not playing a PbtA game, your creator's probably read Apocalypse World or another PbtA game and been inspired by that to create some kind of partial success.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really does has to be a high score. You know what I mean? Like it does.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking like probably like a 9, dude. Like if you really think historically, contextually.
Yeah. I think contextually, give it throw the 9, At least it'll have 2 high scores there.
And value. Yeah.
So value,
first of all,
go ahead.
No, go for it. Yeah.
The book's $40 for print, right?
And that's from what's the website link to it? Where did you find it?
I found it from Apocalypse World's website, and then it links you to Heart of the 𝗔𝗽cie𝗰𝗹𝘆𝗽𝘀.
Yes, great website, by the way. Definitely check out Heart of the 𝗔𝗽cie𝗰𝗹𝘆𝗽𝘀. It's where I also bought the Belonging Between Belonging game that we'll read. The original one. Great website. Definitely check out Heart of the 𝗔𝗽cie𝗰𝗹𝘆𝗽𝘀.
They have a lot of stuff on this website that's pretty good stuff that I have not seen
good shop.
in a lot of other places. And then you can get the PDF on itch and drive-through for like $20.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of the when you get the PDF too, you get more than just this. You get and that's great for players especially. There's all of the let me look at my Dropbox for everything that I got. when it comes to this, because you also get the reference book, which is really just a reference for like all of the characters. So it's all of the character sheets, just that whole basically character section pulled out. And then the list of the character moves, the threat map, basically, honestly, what we should have just read, pulled into its own thing. And then there is also the playbooks themselves. The extended playbooks broken down, so you get more. So the you get more characters. It's like 6 or 7 more characters. So on top of what you get more than just the PDF with it. You get like a player book, and then
I would say that it's above average for value for me. I'm giving it like a really good solid 7.
Yeah, 7 works for me. So, that's where we're at. So, did not love this one.
I had an amazing time going through it with you. So
32. That is what we have for Apocalypse World. Just to sum up, I mean, the faults realistically is just I cannot stand the way this is written. Like,
yeah, I think it's an issue of like age, right? Like I feel like tabletop game writing has been developed a lot in the past few years. I mean, especially since 2020 with this massive push where like not everyone, but a lot of people are putting out their own indie games because everyone was stuck at home and we were all doing this online. And so the writing is really dialed in. The dev editing is really dialed in. Also, people have dev editors and editors. But I think a lot of the issues are of the time period it was made in.
Yeah, I think the second biggest issue, and I probably think is the very first biggest issue, is that from what I can tell, there is no editor.
Yeah.
And God, it needed one. It needed one so bad.
It really
needed
did need
one
one
so bad. It needed someone to just be like, okay, you've said that 5 times already. Let's condense that down. Let's rearrange the chapters. Because this book would be fine, but I would just chop out like 40, 50% of the words, and I would completely rearrange the sections, right? And that would make this, that would jump the score up like fucking like 6, 7, 8. But the usability would go through the roof, right? And then as far as art and layout, whatever, it's wordy. If you want to keep the same page count, obviously we want more art in a book, because when you just have walls of text and at least it's not 2 columns, but there's also no bolds. It's just difficult to read. It's difficult to parse. It's rough. And that is Apocalypse World. Let's pick the next great game that inspired 10 other games that we can fucking hate when we're done reading it. I don't know what the next one is, but let's see.
Again, maybe we won't do that for a while because it sounds awful.
Yeah.
But our next episode next week. What are we doing next week, Ryan?
I have no fucking clue. I mean, completely honest with you. My blood pressure is so high, my brain's not working.
So, are we talking about the thing we're doing on the 15th?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. What are we doing on the 15th, Ryan?
Well, what are we doing? Is today the Sunday before the 15th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then we are going to have Max Moon on once again. They are in the midst of the combined and volume 3 of the Abyss of Hallucinations. So they are going to come on and they're going to run an adventure from Abyss of Hallucinations for us here on the show Wednesday the 15th. Super, super, super excited for that. Max is an amazing person, an amazing creator. Abyss of Hallucinations is something you should back immediately. We have personally got to play with Max GMing us before, but it was off stream and it was super cool. It was so the cyborg adventure.
Oh yeah, I forgot we didn't stream that. We just did that for fun.
Which would be nice to do sometimes. But Max is going to come on. We're actually going to stream it. We're going to talk about Abyss of Hallucinations. Realistically, go buy that, go back that. It's really, really fantastic. And I think after that is the 19th. Yep. And we're going to be doing Planet Fist with Jumpgate Games. Jess Levine, really excited to go over that. Talked about that a little bit today on the Kickstarter episode, which will drop tomorrow, which means it'll be before this one. Really excited for that. It's like if Fist was a narrative tactical war game that uses 2d6 plus stat. So really excited for that. It'll be a nice...
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it'll be a nice version of what I like about games that are based on PbtA. So those are the things we got coming up. A lot of stuff coming up between now and the end of the month, and the end of the year. We are going to be doing a year in review again this year, so we'll get to that. But we're going to stack a lot of stuff in the next couple of weeks. Probably be done by the second week of December, and then just get prepped for the end of that. So that's it. That's our episode. Find all our links at our Linktree / The Weekly Scroll. We'll put links to the meal train for Meg Baker at the bottom, and links to all this stuff. And that's all I got.
That's all I have as well.
All right, we will talk to you later. Have fun in your apocalypse worlds, people. Sex moves.
Bye.